Hi guys, welcome to Midnight Anime Library. I summoned the 8 demons and the world government panicked. One Piece Part 2 Chapter 21, Smoker defeated. Co-Colonel Smoker? You are. Before she could finish speaking, a figure followed closely. Then he landed in front of the just-risen Smoker and punched him in the abdomen. Put! Under Tashiji's astonished gaze, Smoker's body flew backward again. Faster than before. Tashiji was numb. This was too fierce. Bastard! Smoker, flying backward, was going crazy, his teeth gnashing. However, anger was useless. This wasn't a movie, nor was it an anime. Anger, besides making one lose their mind, held no meaningful power boost. Before he could land, another kick came flying. Smoker was struck by lightning, his body arching like a shrimp. White snake. White smoke launcher. White punch. Smoke billowed, and Smoker endured the pain in his body. 3 attacks surged forth in a row. He leaned the elementalized part of his body towards Roxyu to block the attack. But soon, he found it was completely useless. Because Roxyu's speed was simply too fast. Even faster than when they had fought before. So fast that elementalization couldn't keep up. Swish! Roxio's figure disappeared again. When he reappeared, he was already above him. 1 foot. Lifted. Fell. Simple and brutal. He mercilessly stomped on Smoker's head. Smoker, whose head was the only part not elementalized, didn't even have time to steady himself. He just saw a huge footprint heading towards him. Then, the footprint grew larger and larger in the reflection of his pupils. Boom! Without surprise, Smoker was stomped down with 1 kick. The entire ground vibrated. A large pit appeared. Smoke and dust filled the air, and shattered rocks flew. Tashiji and the Marine swallowed hard, dumbfounded. This is Roxyu. The speed of the battle just now was too fast to clearly see anyone's face. Only when the two stopped did they see who was pressing down and pounding the colonel. Roxyu removed his foot from Smoker's face, a large shoe print clearly visible on it. Then, his figure flashed, disappearing with an oppressive aura. However, before leaving, he conveniently harvested the heads of 2 pirates with bounties of 10 million. Although their bounty amounts weren't great. Even a small mosquito is still meat. He was 1 step closer to unlocking the leader mask. Quickly send Colonel Smoker for treatment, a Marine lieutenant commander came to his senses and shouted. At this moment, Smoker's eyes were rolled back, his mouth wide open, and he had already fainted. His entire body was covered in injuries, and his clothes were tattered. Although there were no serious injuries, fine wounds covered his whole body. The overflowing blood dripped down. He looked as if he might not make it at any moment. Colonel, you must hold on. Colonel Smoker, what would we do without you? Several Marine majors wailed, snot and tears flowing, then jumped into the pit to carry Smoker out and send him towards the warship. Smoker came from Marine headquarters, was powerful, and had been stationed in the East Blue for several years. If he really died like this, the pirates of the East Blue would surely run wild. Now's our chance. Everyone, charge out. Seeing Smoker unconscious, the pirates' expressions turned fierce, and sharpening their knives, they prepared to break through the encirclement. Immediately, both sides started fighting. Swords clashed and shouts of battle continued for several hours before finally subsiding. Half a day later. In a medical room. Smoker was wrapped in bandages, his face covered in white cloth. Only his mouth and eyes were exposed. Even so, his exhaustion was still visible in his eyes. To have his face stepped on by a newcomer from the East Blue, this was an extremely humiliating matter no matter how one thought about it. Smoker lay on the hospital bed, and even with medicine on his face, he could feel a burning pain. Tashiji, report the results of this operation. After a long while, Smoker spoke. Tashiji nodded. Colonel Smoker. This time, we killed over 80 pirates and captured nearly 200, who have now been taken back to headquarters. Also, nearly 50 pirates escaped from Waterwave Island. What? More pirates escaped? When Smoker heard that last sentence, the bandages on his body almost couldn't hold. They were about to split. This operation involved over a dozen warships and nearly 1,000 marine soldiers. Weapons and ammunition were also fully stocked. The goal of this operation was to capture all the pirates who came to Waterwave Island in one fell swoop. But the current outcome was so different from what was expected. Nearly 1,000 marines. And they still let many pirates escape. What a joke! If this got out, wouldn't they be laughed at? Co-Colonel Smoker. Because you were injured and unconscious at the time, the majors and lieutenant colonels, to ensure your safety. So they dispatched several hundred elite marine soldiers to escort you to the medical room. Therefore, the intensity of the encirclement operation was greatly reduced. Coupled with Roxio's actions, which boosted the pirate's morale, and his elusive nature, not knowing if he would strike again, so, at this point, Tashiji's voice grew softer and softer until it was completely inaudible. Because at this moment, Smoker's mouth was twisted in anger. Cough, cough, Smoker coughed violently. Hiss. The vibration aggravated his injuries, causing him to involuntarily gasp in a cold breath. Not only was he beaten like this, but the encirclement operation, which was supposed to be a great success according to the plan, also had an accident. Roxio was simply unforgivable. However, he couldn't help but have a sudden thought. If Roxio hadn't appeared at that time, would all this not have happened, and would he also? He shook his head sharply. Smoker cursed himself fiercely in his heart. How could he have such a thought? What about the 3 pirates with bounties over 10 million? Did they escape? Tashiji, they are all dead, killed by Roxio. It's him again. Smoker's eye twitched violently. During the marine encirclement operation, the 3 biggest pirates were killed by a non-marine individual. This was a disgraceful matter no matter where it happened. However, upon closer thought, Smoker found something even more amiss. It was one thing for Roxio to cause him trouble, but why would he kill pirates? He was bewildered, somewhat unable to understand. It didn't make sense. Pirates are naturally opposed to marines, and Roxio was also wanted by the marines. Logically speaking, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Roxio's actions simply couldn't be explained by common sense. Could it be for the bounty? Subsequently, Smoker dismissed this idea. Because Roxio himself was wanted, how would he dare to take pirate heads to a marine branch to exchange for bounty? Even if he dared, the marines would never give it to him. Could it be due to his identity? That's right. The 8 great demons. Thinking of what Roxio had said, his eyes lit up. Chapter 22, Marineford Conference. The 8 great demons. And that Lord Shang, whom I've never heard of. Smoker tried hard to recall the information he had heard in the past. Finally, he sighed. No memory existed. Tashiji. Compile the data from this incident into a file and send it to Marineford. The Fleet Admiral's Office. Sengoku, Marine Hero Garp, and Marine Admiral Kizaru. Sengoku held a document, his brows furrowed. This document was sent from the East Blue Base. It detailed the specifics and results of the battle after Morgans encountered Roxio. Walking over to the conference table, Sengoku placed the document on the surface. Garp. Do you remember that Roxio we talked about before? He asked Garp. Garp, who was sitting nearby crunching on rice crackers, paused the hand stuffing food into his mouth. Tilting his head, he tried hard to think. That pirate from the East Blue. Sengoku, 2 months have passed, why are you still thinking about him? After speaking, Garp resumed his paused actions. A guy with a 60 million bounty shouldn't be worth this much attention. You called us here just for this kid? Garp was puzzled by Sengoku's sudden summons, thinking it was for something major. Turns out it was just because of this person. Although a 60 million bounty coming out of the East Blue is indeed rare. But there's no need to pay so much attention. There are far more troubles to handle in the New World and the Grand Line. Kizaru looked completely relaxed, listening to the conversation between the two seniors. He looked like someone who clocked in and was waiting to clock out. Smoker ran into him. Sengoku continued, pushing the document toward Garp as he spoke. Is that so? Garp chuckled. Although Smoker isn't much of a team player, he is perfectly capable of holding down the East Blue. That Roxio must have been dealt with by now, he said with a smile, glancing at the document, rice crackers almost spilling from his lips. Garp shook his head. The document states that Smoker brought over a dozen battleships and nearly 1,000 Marines to capture the pirates this time. However, due to Roxio's interference, the mission was only half completed, and Smoker engaged Roxio. In the end, he was defeated by him. He shot Garp an annoyed look and recounted the events that transpired on Waterwave Island. As his voice fell silent, Garp's expression slightly sobered. Smoker actually failed. Garp was still somewhat surprised by this news. Smoker is the prize student of former comrade Zephyr, and a Logia smoke ability user. Having been stationed in the East Blue for many years and possessing abundant combat experience, he still couldn't take down a newcomer from the East Blue. But soon, Garp's expression returned to normal. This news could only surprise him slightly. Smoker's rank is marineford captain, possessing strength nearly equal to a rear admiral. Defeating Smoker, it is speculated that Roxio's strength is roughly equivalent to a vice admiral. A vice admiral's strength at marineford is indeed an extremely formidable existence for ordinary people. But when placed on the vast ocean, it's actually not enough to stand out. The Shichibukai, the four emperors' division commanders, the four emperors, and their marine admirals. Which one of them doesn't possess transcendent strength? Furthermore, Garp has seen far too many gifted individuals on the sea during his many years stationed at Marineford. He has also hammered far too many of them with his iron fist. He wasn't particularly bothered. If that were all, I wouldn't have called you two here, Sengoku said, looking at Garp's indifferent expression. What I just mentioned was the most secondary part of this incident. The most important thing is that when Smoker fought Roxio, he discovered that the opponent was not a devil fruit ability user. Non-ability user? Sengoku's words caused Garp to involuntarily sit up straighter. Undoubtedly, the three people present were the peak fighting forces of the Marines. But two of them were devil fruit ability users. Namely Sengoku and Kizaru. Only Garp, however, was a non-ability user. As someone who became a peak powerhouse without relying on a devil fruit, Garp knew very well what this implied. That meant top-tier talent and extremely terrifying potential. Roger, Red Hair, and himself were all people like that. Reaching the ranks of peak powerhouses without relying on a devil fruit. This Roxio is likely far more than just a vice admiral. Furthermore, according to the information recorded here, the speed Roxio displayed at Smoker said he has only ever seen it on one person. Sengoku paused here, not finishing his sentence. But his gaze revealed everything. At this moment, his eyes turned toward Kizaru. Kizaru said in a joking tone, "Me? Fleet Admiral Sengoku, you must be joking." Sengoku didn't speak, but his expression remained serious. Kizaru gave a wry smile. The lazy look on his face vanished. Judging by Sengoku's demeanor, he was clearly not joking. A non-ability user possessing speed comparable to mine. How is that possible? Kizaru looked shocked, but even more perplexed. As the ability user of the Glint fruit, he possessed the most extreme speed on the entire ocean. However, he knew clearly that this was all due to the boost provided by his fruit ability, and because the specific attributes of the Glint fruit were inherently formidable enough. There was no second person like him in the entire world. If someone in the world possessed fighting strength equal to his own, Kizaru might not be too surprised. Because although such people were rare, they weren't non-existent. But if someone could match his speed, that would be outrageous. Especially if that person didn't rely on a devil fruit. That would be even more ridiculous. Garp remained silent. What he was thinking about now was not only the speed but also the self-healing ability reported by the branch office earlier. If he wasn't a devil fruit ability user, the limiting conditions would be much fewer, making the future threat greater. It seems this Roxio must be taken seriously. For someone like this to emerge from the East Blue, it's truly a bit tricky, Garp said, powerfully tapping the table with his fingers. Kizaru nodded, also realizing the severity of the problem. If it were just him alone, it would be easier to handle. The problem is, it seems he's not the only one. Sengoku's goatee twitched, and a sharp glint passed through his eyes beneath his black round-rimmed glasses. Sengoku, what do you mean by that? Not just one? Garp wondered. Have you heard the name Lord Shang? And the 8 Great Demons. Chapter 23. Activating the Dragon Talisman. Fleet Admiral Sengoku slowly said. Garp frowned. Kizaru also frowned. Their expressions conveyed only one piece of information. They didn't know. Not only did they not know, but they had never even heard of it. Sengoku looked at their expressions, as if he had expected it. Because when he first saw those words, his expression was exactly the same as theirs. Sengoku, where did you get this information from? Are you sure it really exists? Garp couldn't help but ask suspiciously. Sengoku pushed up his toad-like glasses. According to Smoker's report, Roxio himself said these words. So, there's no way it's false. Hisgarp placed the senbei in his hand on the table, his face turning solemn. If this is true, it means Roxio is not alone. There might be 7 others. Sengoku nodded. This was the key point of his concern. He couldn't help but rub his aching temples, saying, and the most crucial thing is, we know nothing about him. We don't even know what these demons look like or what abilities they possess. Are their strengths similar to Roxio's? Garp slowly exhaled a turbid breath. Even if they're not as strong as Roxio, they won't be too far off. The 8 Great Demons, how could their strength be poor if they deserve the title demon? Roxio has big ambitions. Such a terrifying organization has been lurking silently for so many years without revealing any information. This can only mean 2 things. Either they are content with their lot, or they are plotting a great enterprise. Judging by Roxio's high-profile style of doing things since his rise in the East Blue, the former can basically be ruled out. Only the latter remains. These self-proclaimed demons are planning a major conspiracy. And Roxio is the first one to come out and test the waters in the Great Sea. Thinking of this, Sengoku felt a headache coming on. The Grand Line in the New World already had enough troublesome characters. Now, an unknown demon organization has appeared. The future world is destined to be anything but peaceful. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, does Roxio's bounty need to be increased? Kizaru asked after a long silence. Roxio's current bounty is 60 million, but according to the information currently available, a bounty of 60 million is simply not enough. No, his bounty doesn't need to be changed, Sengoku said in a deep voice. Indeed. Roxio can defeat Smoker and has grand ambitions. He poses a great threat to the Marines, and even the world government. A bounty of 60 million is not much at all. It's even too little. However, he knew that Roxio's bounty could not be raised. Because if it were to be raised, it would definitely be in the hundreds of millions. Perhaps 100 million, perhaps 200 million, perhaps 500 million. But no matter how many hundreds of millions, this would be an extremely shocking event for a newcomer from the East Blue. Imagine this. A young man who just emerged was given a bounty of several hundred million by the Marines. If this spread to the great pirates in the New World, they would inevitably investigate Roxio. Even the 4 emperors might invite Roxio to become a crew member. At that time, the difficulty for the Marines to deal with Roxio and investigate the organization behind him would increase exponentially. Therefore, what needs to be done is not to increase the bounty, but to block information about Roxio. They must suppress the news of his battle with Smoker with the utmost effort. Before Roxia truly grows, they must secretly make arrangements to capture him. Thinking of this, Sengoku's gaze fell on Kizaru. Borsellino, you must set off immediately, without alarming anyone. Capture Roxiu and bring him back to Marineford as quickly as possible. Smoker's information already indicated that only Kizaru could somewhat match Roxiu's speed. So, to prevent others from escaping, sending Kizaru was undoubtedly the most suitable choice. Oh dear. Kizaru couldn't help but show a lazy expression upon hearing that he had a mission. These young people nowadays are getting fiercer and fiercer. My good days are coming to an end, Roxiu. Although he said that, he would not refuse the mission assigned by Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Moreover, he also realized the importance of the matter. This Roxiu must be captured to clarify what is going on with the demon forces behind him. Then, Sengoku said to Garp in a low voice, "It's alright, come home often. You haven't been back to the East Blue in a while. Go and put things in order. And investigate Roxiu's affairs while you're at it, East Blue." A very secluded small island. The coastline was shaded by green trees, and the white sand on the beach was as smooth as silk. At this time, it was dusk. The entire sky was dyed orange and light purple, and the sea surface also turned golden yellow, enveloping the island in the middle. A few scattered fishermen, in small boats, slowly approached the island from the distant sea horizon. Their faces were filled with the smiles of returning at sunset, laden with their catch. "Today's harvest is good. Enough for us to eat for several days. Ha ha ha, indeed. We finally had a good day." They chatted and laughed, praising today's labor. Boom! Just then, in an uninhabited area on the east side of the island, a violent roar suddenly came, accompanied by soaring flames. What happened? It's an explosion over there. After securing their small boats, the fishermen quickly jogged towards that direction, quietly investigating the situation. Before long, they arrived at the location of the explosion. They saw a man with black hair and black eyes, 2 meters tall, sitting on a rock. It was Roxiu, who had left Waterwave Island. Who the power of the life talisman is indeed formidable. Yes. The explosion just now. Was Roxiu activating the 4th talisman, the Dragon Talisman? It is also the innate demonic power of the fire. Demon Shindu. It can unleash highly destructive explosive flames, representing explosive bombardment. 1 month's time to complete the awakening of the 4th talisman. It must be said, it was very fast. After all, the activation of the talismans becomes more difficult and time-consuming the further one progresses. The frequent use of speed in the battle with Smoker contributed greatly. Now, with the blessing of the life talisman, Roxiu felt his body filled with explosive power. His strength had also risen a level. If he previously needed some effort to beat Smoker, then now, with the explosive power of the Dragon Talisman, Smoker would be saying goodbye within a few moves. Thus, Roxiu couldn't help but think, how would it compare to an admiral? Chapter 24, Entering the Grand Line. After a brief moment of thought, Roxiu shook his head. As the peak combat power of this world, the true extent of an admiral's strength could only be known after a real fight. Imagining it was baseless. However, relying on the heaven-defying self-healing ability of the horse talisman. Even if he were to truly encounter an admiral one day, he would have nothing to fear. Although I didn't obtain a devil fruit during this operation, I did gain over 3 points of leadership value. But I'm still far from the grand goal. I need to leave the East Blue and head to the Grand Line. Roxiu thought to himself. While there were few strong people in the East Blue who could pose a major threat to him, opportunities were equally scarce. Opportunities were equally scarce. A devil fruit might not appear in the entire sea for years, and even if one did, there was no guarantee he could acquire it. As for pirate bounties, they were pitifully low. There were barely any left worth tens of millions of berries. If he stayed in the East Blue trying to activate the mask and the demon, he would have to wait forever. But the Grand Line was different. It was a paradise for the new generation of pirates, and it contained vast kingdoms, making it undoubtedly the best choice. Furthermore, the news of Smoker's defeat must have already reached Marine headquarters. They would dispatch personnel to investigate, implement, and carry out the capture. The East Blue was no longer a good place to stay, no matter what. Considering this, Roxio got up, preparing to leave the small island. Hiss, however, right at this moment. Several strong energy surges suddenly erupted within Roxio's body, like hot currents speeding through his veins, causing a stinging pain. This sensation made him instinctively curl up, clenching his fists tightly, attempting to resist the intense stimulation. But as the energy surges intensified, the stinging became more violent, like a cutting knife slicing through his flesh. What's going on? Fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, and his features became slightly contorted. Could it be due to the incompatibility of energy between the talismans? Roxio considered this possibility. In the original work, although the powers of the 12 talismans were formidable, if several talismans were used together, their powers would clash and become chaotic. Simply put, they repelled each other, unwilling to yield. Previously, activating 3 talismans hadn't caused any noticeable effect. But when the 4th talisman was activated, this incompatibility began to manifest. It seems so. Roxio slowly exhaled a long breath, suppressing the stinging pain. He couldn't think of any other reason. I thought the Shindu template would make this side effect disappear. I didn't expect it to still exist. Fortunately, the 5th one about to be activated is the Tiger Talisman. It can balance these powers. The Tiger Talisman is a special auxiliary item that balances conflicting powers. Its original purpose was to regulate the conflict of all talisman magic within Shindu's body, dissolving the power clash to prevent chaos. That is, to prevent mutual damage between yin and yang and harmonize the flaws of the 12 talismans' interactions. If the Tiger Talisman were activated, the problem Roxio currently faced would naturally be solved easily. Open the system space. Inside the system space, the Tiger Talisman was situated between gray and bright. This counts as luck. Roxio smiled. But soon, he remembered the side effect of the Tiger Talisman, and his smile froze. It can split a person into 2 yin and yang. Sigh. I hope I won't split open when the time comes. Roxio could only pray silently in his heart. He then put these thoughts aside and looked forward. I should ask for directions first. Thinking this, Roxio's figure vanished from the spot with a hum. The fishermen who had been secretly watching nearby were instantly startled. By the time they reacted, Roxio was already standing in front of them. Don't kill me. We were just passing through here. The faces of the few fishermen were filled with panic, thinking the person was a pirate intent on killing witnesses. Sirs, which direction should I go to leave the East Blue quickly? Roxio asked. One of the fishermen was stunned, then pointed in a direction. Thanks. Roxio smiled, pulling out a few berries as a token of gratitude. Afterward, he sped away like a bolt of lightning, disappearing from the inconspicuous little island. The fisherman watched the disappearing Roxio and muttered, "There are still many good people in this world." 2 days later, a certain sea area. A red mountain peak was extremely conspicuous, like an inverted giant pillar soaring into the clouds, or a massive red sword hanging upside down over the sea. In the middle of the mountain peak, seawater flowed upward. The water flow had 4 inlets and 1 outlet, 4 diagonal channels flowed in from the 4 seas, converged at the mountain peak, and then flowed out through 1 horizontal channel. This was the entrance to the Grand Line, Reverse Mountain. Roxio stood beneath the rushing current, looking up. I'm finally here. After continuously changing pirate ships along the way, he had left the East Blue and finally arrived at the Grand Line. The next moment, Roxio leaped lightly, following the current toward the Grand Line. Sizzle, accompanied by a violent splash, Roxio rushed out of the reverse mountain's current and directly into the vast sea of the Grand Line. A brand new world appeared before him. And a giant mouth rushing toward him. Suddenly, the surroundings instantly became pitch black, and all light vanished. The sky was filled with a high-hanging sun. The air was scorching hot. Yet Roxio felt no warmth. Roxio? Then, he punched upwards. Boom! A muffled sound vibrated. After a burst of earth-shattering commotion, Roxio felt himself being spat out by something. He looked back at the thing that had swallowed him whole. The corner of Roxio's mouth twitched slightly. Because he recognized the thing that had swallowed him. At the same time, on the other side, an old man with saffron-colored hair was jogging over. Crocus? What a coincidence! Roxio raised an eyebrow. Crocus, the former doctor of the Roger Pirates. Currently the lighthouse keeper at Twin Capes. He had been taking care of the whale Laboon here. Please don't attack, it's sick. Crocus rushed over and looked at Laboon, who was writhing in pain on the sea surface, and quickly said. Laboon had been waiting here for the Rumbar pirates for decades, and its temper had become extremely violent. It would occasionally suffer episodes, crashing into Reverse Mountain. Roxio ignored Crocus, instead turning to look at Laboon, stepping onto the water surface, and placing his hand on Laboon's massive forehead. Crocus's pupils contracted. He thought Roxio was about to attack again. However, a shocking scene unfolded before him. Laboon, which had been thrashing violently moments ago, slowly calmed down under the young man's palm. Moreover, the scars left on its head from years of crashing were healing at a visible rate. Chapter 25, Twin Capes. Abu and the Ship Doctor. 2 days later. Inside the lighthouse at Twin Capes. Crocus held a barrel of wine and walked into the house, smiling. Roxio was standing by the window, watching Abu playing happily below. The scene from 2 days ago echoed in his mind. At that time, after using the horse talisman to treat Abu, Crocus was greatly surprised. He then warmly invited Roxio to his residence to express his gratitude. Roxio originally intended to leave immediately. But after a second thought, he temporarily abandoned the idea. The reason was simple. As a crew member of the Roger Pirates, Crocus could be called a living fossil of the sea. Such a treasure trove of knowledge possessed much experience in the pirate world that Roxio lacked. Ha ha ha. Roxio, come over and have a few drinks first. Crocus placed the wine barrel on the table and called out to Roxio. You've nearly finished off my entire stock these past 2 days. You really didn't save any for yourself, did you? Roxio turned around and smiled. Whenever Crocus had time during the past 2 days, he would invite Roxio to drink with him. This left his already small stock even more depleted. Ha 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 ha. Drinking alone, no matter how much, is boring. Besides, you helped Abu, which makes you my friend. A little bit of wine is nothing. Crocus didn't mind at all. Abu's physical ailment had troubled him for many years. He had made many efforts for this. He had helped Abu modify his body and created large doses of tranquilizers. But no matter what, it only provided relief. But now, through Roxio's hands, all the problems were easily solved. It was nothing. Roxio smiled, poured a cup for himself, and then poured one for Crocus. This wasn't modesty, it truly was a small favor. I really don't know how someone as young as you acquired such medical skill, Crocus said, shaking his head and downing his cup in one go. As the ship doctor of the Pirate King Roger Pirates, he had sailed the seas for decades many years ago. While his medical skill might not have reached the absolute pinnacle of this world, few could surpass him. He was one of the world's most outstanding doctors. He was also an excellent pharmacist and surgeon. But even so, he was powerless against Abu's illness, only able to try different methods to alleviate it. It was the first time he had encountered someone with such miraculous medical ability as Roxio. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh, what a pity. Decades ago, facing Roger's terminal illness, he had been similarly helpless. He could only use methods to alleviate the symptoms and forcibly prolong his life. If Roxio had been born a few decades earlier, perhaps his former captain, Roger, wouldn't have died. He could also continue searching for the Rumbar pirates. But these thoughts were ultimately just musings. Roxio looked at the sighing Crocus, thinking he was sad because of Abu's situation. Although Abu's injury is healed, it is only temporary. Compared to physical wounds, psychological issues are more important. Roxia said slowly. If this aspect cannot be fundamentally cured, problems will arise sooner or later. The hardest wounds to heal in this world are not physical, but psychological. Even the horse talisman is powerless. Crocus naturally knew what Roxio was referring to, but soon, his eyes narrowed. He heard a different meaning in those words. You know about Abu's past? Roxio nodded. Then, do you know about the Rumbar pirates? Roxio nodded but remained silent. But the silence explained everything. The Rumbar pirates had met with misfortune many years ago. Crocus's expression couldn't help but become somewhat lonely. In fact, he had long anticipated this result. After all, nearly 50 years had passed, and if they could have returned, they would have done so long ago. But when someone confirmed the matter, he still couldn't help but feel sentimental. This meant that Abu's waiting was ultimately a meaningless endeavor. But there is good news. Someone from the Rumbar pirates is still alive. Roxia said. Crocus had two main concerns in this world. One was Abu, and the other was the Rumbar pirates. Hearing this news, his somewhat subdued eyes immediately lit up. Before he could ask, Roxio continued, one day, you will naturally meet. Also, his name is Brook. Is that so? Crocus smiled, feeling somewhat relieved in his heart. If anyone else had told him this news, he might not have believed it. But coming from Roxio, it was different. Crocus chose to believe him. Because in Roxio, he saw an aura that did not belong to this era. It was very powerful and very mysterious. This was something others lacked. This was also another reason why he invited Roxio into the lighthouse. Phew, are you heading to the Grand Line today? Crocus changed the subject and asked Roxio. Roxio nodded. He had already stayed here for 2 days. Although it was peaceful, it didn't help much with improving his strength. There were still many things waiting to be accomplished on the Grand Line. How about going a little later? Crocus stroked his whitening beard. He could understand the feeling of a young person wanting to conquer the Grand Line. However, Crocus felt that Roxia should make more preparations. After all, the Grand Line was vastly different from the Four Seas. It was much more dangerous. Why? Roxio asked, puzzled. I can tell your strength is formidable. But you are still missing a few things. Hockey, for example. Crocus adjusted his glasses. Hockey is the symbol of absolute strength on this sea. It is the most indispensable thing for a peak powerhouse. Roxio raised an eyebrow. Hockey, huh? Roxio had some understanding of Crocus's strength. Although he didn't have many fighting scenes in the original work, Crocus had spent many years on Roger's ship. The Roger pirates had fought the Golden Lion pirates, the Rocks pirates, the Whitebeard pirates, and the Garp trio. Without formidable strength, it would have been impossible to survive so many fierce battles. Furthermore, the fact that he was the ship doctor of the Roger pirates speaks volumes about his own strength. Roxio was not at all surprised that Crocus spoke of hockey. Observation hockey, one of the 3 colors. This is the old man's specialty. Chapter 26, Awakening Observation Hockey. Observation hockey. It allows one to perceive the location and number of enemies outside the line of sight, as well as the actions they will take in the next instant. It is the strongman's pass in this world. Upholding the belief that one can never have too many skills. Roxio didn't dwell on it much and decided to listen to Crocus and stay here for a while longer. It wouldn't be too late to leave after activating observation hockey. In the blink of an eye. 5 days passed. Twin Capes. Coast. Roxia stood on the shore, his eyes lifted. Boom! A dazzling pillar of flame shot out from the center of his palm, striking the red earth cliff. Immediately, shattered rocks flew up, and a massive, dark, scorched crater appeared in view. At the same time, a figure flashed across the cliff face at extreme speed. Crocus was sweating profusely, constantly moving across the red earth, dodging Roxiu's flame-burst attacks. Push off the rock in the bottom left corner. This is Roxiu's blind spot. He contemplated his next move. The next moment, his speed increased again, and he stepped toward his predetermined target. However, boom! Another extremely explosive sound rang out. The rock in the bottom left corner was blasted into fragments by Roxiu's pillar of flame. That Roxia fellow. He actually predicted my next move. Crocus felt his scalp tingle upon seeing his intentions exposed. Obviously, this was because Roxia used observation haki. If it weren't for haki, it would have been impossible to detect and accurately strike this blind spot. It's only been a few days. Crocus couldn't help but inwardly complain. When he awakened observation haki, it took him tremendous effort. Yet, Roxia showed absolutely no bottleneck. Going from 0 to having it only took 2 days, this learning speed was simply unprecedented. That's right. 3 days ago, Roxio had already gained a preliminary understanding of observation haki and completed the awakening. Now he was honing his advanced practice. Boom! Before Crocus could continue thinking, Roxio's attack struck again. This time, he struck the position directly in front of Crocus, severing his path forward once more. Abu, who was in the nearby seawater, saw Roxio and Crocus sparring, bobbing up and down in the water happily, spraying seawater and mimicking their movements, expressing his excitement and thrill. Finally, after several interceptions by Roxio, Crocus on the red cliff couldn't handle it anymore. Subsequently, he shouted for a stop. The sparring match finally ended. Observation haki, I've taught you almost everything I can. That's enough for today. Crocus let out a long breath, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and said to Roxio. Roxio retracted his aura, I must thank you for sparring with me these past few days. You worked hard. Crocus waved his hand, indicating there was no need to be so polite. Although I am old, it doesn't mean I can't move. I can still handle a few days of sparring. Actually, I originally estimated it would take you at least a month or so just to touch the threshold of haki. Who knew you would learn so fast? I really don't know how you managed to quickly reach this critical point. Although it was called sparring, the whole process was actually quite simple. Roxio would stand still and attack Crocus, while Crocus would use observation haki to dodge in advance. This was done to refine Roxio's observation haki ability. It seemed like one person attacked and the other dodged. But in reality, it was a confrontation between their observation haki. As for why Roxio was asked to stand still, the reason was simple. Because Crocus discovered during the first day of training that Roxio's speed was unbelievably fast. So fast that he couldn't dodge in time and Roxio would already be right in front of him. Crocus had no choice but to set this condition, otherwise, there would be no way for them to fight. Roxio gave an awkward smile regarding Crocus's words. Thanks to the physical talent brought by fusing the talisman, his 5 senses were already sharp, coupled with Crocus's guidance. There were virtually no obstacles in learning haki. Perhaps, this is just talent. Crocus muttered to himself, then looked Roxio over and slowly said, Your current observation haki should be at the intermediate level. But how to reach the advanced level is not something others can guide you on, the rest you must continuously improve on yourself. Haki can be divided into 3 levels: elementary, intermediate, advanced. Roxio's observation haki level is currently in the 2nd tier. But it is still some distance from the advanced level. However, this seemed normal to Crocus. After all, how long had Roxio been training? This result was already surprising enough. Moreover, throughout the entire sea, there aren't many who can cultivate haki to the advanced level. Which of them isn't a peak figure? such as the Four Emperors, Red Count, Golden Lion, and so on. Understood. Roxio acknowledged. After all, Crocus isn't Teacher Kaido, who can inspire potential with a single swing of a club. He understood this principle. In the blink of an eye, 3 more days passed. The weather was clear and sunny. It was a good day. Today was also the day Roxio was leaving Twin Capes. He had stayed here for about 10 days in total. If he stayed any longer, Roxio feared he would exhaust everything Crocus had to offer. At this moment, Roxio stood on the shore, bidding farewell to Crocus. Abu's massive body leaned nearby, his eyes showing a hint of sadness. "We will meet again. When that time comes, I'll take you on a trip around the world." Roxio patted Abu's head and said with a smile. Abu rubbed against Roxio's arm. Words spoken were set in stone. Roxio believed this day would not be far off. Before parting, Crocus pulled something out of his pocket. Although reluctant, parting is a normal part of life. He handed the item to Roxio. "This is a log pose. It will be very useful within the Grand Line. It's a gift for you." Chapter 27, Whiskey Peak. Bounty Hunters. When sailing the 4 seas east, west, south, and north, fixed ocean currents exist between islands, along with predictable winds caused by climatic shifts, making navigation simple across the 4 seas. But the Grand Line is different. The magnetic fields are highly erratic and difficult to detect. Furthermore, there are all sorts of extreme weather conditions and even sudden, unique ocean currents. Therefore, a log pose is absolutely necessary. Roxio took the log pose handed to him by Crocus and nodded, "Thanks." "Oh, right. I never asked you before. You sailed here from the entrance, but I didn't see your sailboat. How do you plan to cross?" The depths of the Grand Line harbor massive sea kings, ferocious sea beasts, countless vicious pirate crews, and even bounty hunters. Traveling alone is inherently an extremely dangerous endeavor. Especially since he didn't even see a ship. At the time, he didn't quite understand why Roxio came down the currents of Reverse Mountain without anything, just himself. "As long as I'm fast enough?" Roxio laughed heartily in response to Crocus's question. "Fast enough?" Crocus was slightly confused but didn't press for details. "I'm off." Roxio finally waved goodbye to Crocus and Abu. The path was beneath his feet. It was time to showcase his real skills. The next moment. With a whoosh. Following the route specified by Crocus, Roxio sped across the sea, leaving a trail of dust and vanishing from their sight. Only the spectacular spray of water, kicked up high, slapped against the lighthouse. Crocus watched Roxio leave, his eyes gleaming as he swallowed hard. He finally understood what Roxio meant. It really is, as long as he's fast enough. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. In a certain sea area in the first half of the Grand Line, a massive pirate ship slowly advanced across the calm water. Judging purely by appearance, this pirate ship was several times larger than the vessels sailing in the East Blue. On the deck, some pirates were gathered together, drinking and chatting idly. Laughter and noise were constant. "Drink up. How can you be done already, kid? Diego is just weak. To be a pirate, you should drink from large bowls and eat meat in huge mouthfuls. You guys should drink less. Whiskey Peak is not far ahead. I heard this place welcomes rookie pirates. The captain said we're going to dock soon to resupply." A pirate, who looked like an executive, reminded them while holding his wine glass. After speaking, he took another gulp himself. Meanwhile, in a corner of the ship, Roxio listened to the pirates' merrymaking and shook his head. After leaving Twin Capes, he had hitchhiked all the way, traversing the vast ocean, to gather more information and reduce unnecessary conflict. Roxio was much more reserved compared to his time in the East Blue. Thus, no one on the entire pirate ship had discovered that there was a stranger aboard. Whiskey Peak. If I recall correctly, this place isn't a good destination for pirates. Roxio mused internally, realizing it seemed to be a gathering spot for bounty hunters. Areas with mixed populations make it easier to gather intelligence. It was quite a decent place to stop. Boom, boom, boom. Just then, the leader of this pirate crew strode onto the bow of the ship. My lads! Whiskey Peak is straight ahead. Everyone pack up and prepare to disembark. Drawing the sword from his waist, he shouted at the pirates gathered on the deck. The pirates on the deck immediately had excited gleams in their eyes and let out a unified roar of cheers. Every pirate who dared to come to the Grand Line carried an ultimate dream and was full of anticipation for the future. This was their first stop after arriving in the Grand Line from the Four Seas. It held extremely important significance. Sizzle, the massive ship approached the coast, and the pirates aboard shouted as they descended from the deck one by one. Thump, thump, thump. Continuous footsteps stomped the ground, making echoing sounds. Roxio mingled with the crowd and followed them off the ship. Friends who have traveled so far, please come this way. At the coast of Whiskey Peak, there were personnel already waiting to receive guests. Seeing the pirates arrive, each person enthusiastically greeted them. This way, sir, please. We've prepared a banquet to welcome everyone. Just as Roxio was looking around, a man with a long beard walked up to him. Is it free? Roxio asked with a smile. Rest assured. Whiskey Peak hosts banquets every day. They are specifically held to welcome pirates arriving from the four great seas. You won't have to pay a single fee for the entire event, the long-bearded man said politely. Roxio nodded with a smile and followed the man toward the destination. After a short while, they reached the location, which was an extremely spacious area. Pirates who had arrived from various places were currently drinking heavily and boasting about their past achievements. They talked about how many people they had killed and how much treasure they had stolen. The reception staff of Whiskey Peak poured wine and served dishes for them. The entire banquet was filled with a lively atmosphere. Finding a corner spot, Roxio sat down. Soon, the man who had led Roxio over brought a barrel of wine and poured a cup for him. Here, this is fine wine brewed exclusively at Whiskey Peak, provided only for pirates traveling here from various seas. May I ask which sea area you traveled from? The long-bearded man asked while pouring the wine. The East Blue. Roxio replied calmly. Gathering some intelligence before the assassination. Standard procedure for a bounty hunter. Upon hearing Roxio's words, just as expected, a flash of excitement crossed the long-bearded man's eyes. The East Blue is the weakest of the four seas. Pirates emerging from there are naturally weak in strength. These pirates today would be easy pickings for them. I heard a rumor that a pirate with a 60 million bounty emerged from your East Blue. I wonder if that's true, the long-bearded man continued to ask. Yes, there is. Roxia chuckled. A bounty of 60 million. I'm truly curious what kind of person that guy is. Having received confirmation, the long-bearded man didn't even bother to conceal the greed in his eyes. 60 million, how many rookie pirates arriving from the four seas would they need to kill to reach that amount? I heard he has explosive muscles all over his body, can tear marines apart with his bare hands, and likes to wear overalls and a center part in his hair. That is quite unusual. No wonder he could rise to fame in the East Blue and claim the throne of the highest bounty in the four seas. The long-bearded man looked enlightened. Because the Marine had deliberately sealed off information regarding Roxio, although people in the Grand Line had heard Roxio's name from pirates arriving there, very few had actually seen his wanted poster. And they certainly didn't know what Roxio looked like. Well, you enjoy your drink here. I'll go attend to the others first. The long-bearded man poured Roxio another cup of wine and then excused himself. Roxio raised the cup and downed the drink right in front of him. With the horse talisman on him, drugged wine like this wouldn't have any effect on him whatsoever. Seeing Roxio finish the drink, the long-bearded man smiled, then disappeared from Roxio's sight. Chapter 28, Tell me, News of the Devil Fruit. An hour later. The medicine began to take effect. The noisy clamor, the clinking of glasses, and the boasting slowly faded away. Hundreds of pirates lay on the ground, on tables, and on top of each other in various strange poses. Ha 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 ha. These foolish pirates actually think Whiskey Peak is a charity? It's free, but you'll pay with your lives. Seeing everyone who had drunk the wine collapse, the long-bearded man revealed his true colors. His earlier polite and refined demeanor turned violent and arrogant. With a whoosh, a man, seemingly the leader of the bounty hunters, pulled out a pre-prepared greatsword from under the table. Everyone, move. Chop these people up. Remember not to disfigure their faces, we need those to collect bounties from the marine. I'll take care of this side. You handle that side. The long-bearded man received his leader's instruction and walked towards the corner. When he saw someone still sitting upright, slowly sipping the wine in front of him, his expression immediately changed. You're actually fine? He looked at Roxio, whom he had personally brought over, quite surprised. He had been here for so long and encountered countless pirates. He had never seen anyone who could drink this wine without getting dizzy. Let me ask you something. Roxio glanced at him and said indifferently, do you know where there are devil fruits, or do you have any in stock? Name your price. I'll buy it at a price higher than the market value. The bounty hunters in Whiskey Peak, having accumulated over the years, had plundered so many pirate ships. Perhaps some pirate ships had contained devil fruits. This was Roxio's purpose for attending this banquet. And even if there weren't any, he could still inquire about them from them. Hearing this, the long-bearded man's expression tightened, then he burst into laughter. You really are a new pirate. What if you didn't pass out? To dare ask about devil fruits as soon as you arrive in the Grand Line. You really haven't seen much of the world. I think, kid, you'd better ask down below. Although he didn't know why Roxio was fine despite drinking the wine right under his nose. But there was only this one young man left, and he came from the East Blue, so he wouldn't be easy to deal with. He thought so, and he acted so. The long-bearded man was too lazy to talk nonsense. He charged at Roxio with his long sword, whooshing. Pfft, a splash of blood. Immediately after, a scream rang out. The long-bearded man had his arm chopped off directly by Roxio. Next, Roxio threw the long sword in his hand to the ground, not even glancing at the long-bearded man howling on the floor, then looked at another bounty hunter. You tell me. Such a sudden scene. All the bounty hunters present couldn't help but look over. When they saw the tragic scene, their expressions all changed. Good kid. He didn't pass out. How irritating. The leader sneered, then instructed his subordinates. Cut him down first. Then deal with the others. With a buzz. Those bounty hunters who were originally dealing with the unconscious pirates on the ground immediately aimed their targets at Roxio. Blood dripped from their weapons. At this moment, the one Roxio was pointing at twitched his mouth fiercely. Kid. You're looking for death. He held a spiked club, his face grim. He charged towards Roxio. Simple and decisive. His arm was also dismembered. That's not what I want to hear. Roxio shifted his gaze to another bounty hunter. You tell me. So fast. Did you see it just now? No, too fast. Damn it, we've run into a tough one. The bounty hunters who witnessed Roxio's move couldn't help but gulp. They couldn't even clearly see his movements. The pressure immediately mounted. The bounty hunter leader looked at Roxio, twisting his neck. Kid, you have some skill. Chop off one of your hands. Then get out of here. This old man might spare your life. Roxio glanced at him and said indifferently, you still haven't answered my question. Humph. You're asking for death. The bounty hunter leader sneered. In Whiskey Peak, what kind of pirates hadn't he seen? A new pirate, even if he had some tricks, didn't scare him. Chop him up, he called out. Buzz. The bounty hunters all showed fierce expressions, sharpening their blades, their swords gleaming. They surrounded Roxio. The next instant, they lunged at Roxio. Bang bang bang. The moment they touched Roxio, continuous sounds erupted. The sound of snapping swords and screams were incessant. Within a few breaths, bodies were flying everywhere. Bounty hunters lay scattered on the ground. Their faces contorted in pain, writhing on the floor. Only you're left. Roxio looked at the sole-standing bounty hunter leader. The latter's legs were trembling. This wasn't just running into a tough opponent. This was running into a ghost. How could a new pirate from the Four Seas be so damn strong? Impossible. Has anyone in the Four Seas recently reached this level of strength? Hissed the bounty hunter leader suddenly thought of someone, and his face instantly changed dramatically. You're that 6 million berries new pirate from the East Blue. Boom! The more he thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. His mind exploded. Roxio, with a bounty of 6 million, actually looked so unremarkable. Brothers, he's the walking 6 million. Get him. Then we won't have to be bounty hunters here anymore. Roxio's identity not only didn't scare the bounty leader. Instead, it ignited the greed in his heart. This was 6 million berries. If they killed him, they wouldn't have to worry for the rest of their lives. The long-bearded man lying on the ground looked even more shocked. He had just been asking about him, but he didn't expect to be asking the person himself. Then, he forced himself to crawl up. Bounty hunters were all people who lived by the sword. They would do anything for money. Hearing the leader mention 6 million, their eyes all lit up. Buzz. Another wave of encirclement. Roxio shook his head and sighed inwardly. This method of questioning ultimately wouldn't work. These bounty hunters simply wouldn't communicate normally with him. They were all dim-witted individuals. The next moment, he flashed next to a pirate. With a snap, he twisted the opponent's neck. Then, he charged into the crowd. This time, he didn't hold back. Since his identity was recognized, it was best to be decisive. Continuous crashing sounds ensued, and the entire banquet became a one-sided slaughter. The bounty hunters who had set the trap here lay scattered on the ground, fallen into eternal sleep. At the same time, in a corner of the banquet hall, a man with exaggerated curly hair, draped over his shoulders, silently watched everything unfold. Then, he pulled out a wanted poster from his pocket and took a look. It really is you. Chapter 29, Igaram's Request. Roxio dealt with the bounty hunters and glanced at the unconscious pirates. He chose not to act on them. He needed to take a pirate ship out early tomorrow morning. If he dealt with all of them, he would truly have to rely on his own legs to speed across the sea. Although the speed of the rabbit talisman was much faster than the movement of a pirate ship. But this consumed a lot of stamina. He also didn't want to appear too conspicuous on the Grand Line. Thinking of this, Roxio instantly flashed away from the area. On the other side, the curly-haired man who had watched Roxio suddenly disappear silently put away the wanted poster in his hand. Such fast speed. I couldn't even see which direction he went, he muttered to himself. That's truly rare. He then shook his head, lifted his feet, and prepared to leave. But the next moment, as he turned around, he saw the person who had just disappeared standing right in front of him. His pupils suddenly contracted. Do you need something from me? Roxio asked coldly. Under the perception of observation hockey, the surrounding situation was crystal clear. This person naturally couldn't escape Roxio's notice. Why yes, hello, let me introduce myself. My name is Igaram. I am a secret agent working on Whiskey Peak. A citizen of the great kingdom of Alabasta. Igaram immediately regained his composure and spoke politely. Alabasta? Igaram? Roxio heard these names. His brow couldn't help but furrow. He pondered internally. He recalled the plot from the original work. It seemed there was indeed such a person on Whiskey Peak. Moreover, this person was not only the guardian of the Alabasta Kingdom. He was also a mid-level agent for Baroque Works, codenamed Mr. 8. although he was actually an undercover agent within the organization. So what? Roxiu asked. If the other party didn't give him a suitable reason, their fate would be the same as the bounty hunters. This is not the place to talk. Please follow me to my residence for a discussion. Igaram felt the sharpness in Roxiu's eyes, swallowed, and extended the invitation. Roxiu hesitated for a few seconds, and driven by curiosity, decided to go and see Igaram's residence. After hearing Igaram state his request, Roxiu's eyes flickered slightly. You want me to help you resolve the kingdom's crisis? Aren't you overestimating me? We didn't know each other before, did we? The Alabasta Kingdom. It was currently facing a huge internal conflict. The secret criminal organization Baroque Works, led by the former 7 warlords of the Sea Crocodile, was carrying out the Utopia operation here. The country, except for the capital Aliabarna, had gone without rain for 3 years. Due to Baroque Works' deliberate manipulation, the citizens were led to believe that the drought was caused by the king secretly using the rain-inducing agent dance powder, thus triggering a civil war. You are a great pirate from the east. Blue with a bounty of 60 million berries. I witnessed your strength just now. Your true strength is far greater than 60 million. If you are willing, even if you don't resolve the crisis entirely, you can become a great help to us. I can offer you compensation. Igaram said with a humble attitude. In fact, suddenly deciding to seek Roxiu's help for his kingdom was a choice he had to make out of desperation. Because the kingdom's current situation is not primarily about the civil war, but rather a force hidden in the shadows, driving and manipulating everything. And most importantly, this force is extremely powerful. Therefore, he could only appeal to the strong, trying to find pirates with powerful abilities to consolidate their side strength. To prepare for the upcoming battle. Taking a risky approach, making a dangerous move. Compensation? Hearing this, Roxiu looked at Igaram with interest. Yes. How many berries would you require to take action? As a superpower located in the first half of the Grand Line, covering an area of over 10 million square kilometers. Although it was currently facing chaos, money was abundant. I don't need berries. Does your kingdom have a devil fruit? Roxiu asked directly. A devil fruit? Igaram's face stiffened. After a moment of silence, he paused, then looked at Roxiu and continued, yes. But a devil fruit is extremely important, and it's not something my status allows me to decide. It requires a decision from the royal family. Regarding berries, he could decide immediately. After all, his status as the captain of the Alabasta Kingdom Guard was undeniable. But when it involved a devil fruit, the nature was completely different. Then I apologize. Roxiu shook his head and refused, seeing no result. Without a devil fruit, there was absolutely no need to clash with a Shichibukai just for some berries. Please don't refuse yet. This is a den mushi, please keep it with you for now. If the royal family agrees, I will inform you of the result. Igaram took out a den mushi and handed it to Roxiu. Of course, if you change your mind, you can also call me. Alright. Roxiu accepted it. Calling you back is out of the question. Except for a devil fruit, nothing else holds any meaning right now. Afterward, the two chatted briefly. Only then did Roxiu stand up and leave. Since there's nothing else, I'll be going now. I look forward to your call. Before leaving, he pointed at the den mushi. Igaram nodded. Watching Roxiu leave, he couldn't help but sigh. What a pity. I'll have to find someone else. Inviting Roxiu was just a small, improvised plan of his, and as for the devil fruit matter, he wouldn't mention it to the royal family at all. The reason was simple. In his opinion, although Roxiu was strong, he was only somewhat strong. Having him could add a fighting force to the kingdom and slightly increase the possibility of victory. But compared to the rarity of a devil fruit, it was not on the same level at all. Unless he alone could take out the force hidden in the shadows. But this was completely impossible, even for someone with a 60 million berries bounty. As for why he gave the den mushi to Roxiu, he wanted Roxiu to change his mind and reply when he decided he wanted the bounty. I need to return to the kingdom. Igaram slowly breathed out and murmured. The next day, Roxiu continued sailing across the sea aboard the pirate ship. What happened with the bounty hunters yesterday, besides shocking and frightening the pirates, did not affect their courage to continue sailing. This was quite good. In the blink of an eye, another day passed. The Alabasta Kingdom. Baroque works. A man with slick back hair, a long horizontal scar across his face, an earring in his right ear, and a penchant for smoking cigars. He sat at the head of a long table capable of seating a dozen people, his fingers habitually tapping the tabletop, producing a crisp sound. Beside him was a captivating woman wearing glasses, with flowing black hair and a shapely figure. At this moment, a staff member of the organization walked in. President, the results of the investigation regarding Mr. 8 and Mr. Wednesday are out. Chapter 30, Princess Vivi is being hunted. Crocodile's expression hardened, and he leaned slightly forward. Speak. They are people of the Alabasta Kingdom. Bang! Crocodile slammed his arm, which was made of a golden hook, onto the table. Damn it! Hearing this news, Crocodile was in a foul mood. He hadn't expected that two of the organization's intermediate agents would actually be from the Alabasta Kingdom. What made it even harder for him to accept was that these two people had followed Robin and seen his true face. Without a doubt, both of them were royal spies. His goal was to seize the Alabasta Kingdom under the guise of a national hero and obtain intelligence regarding Pluton, one of the three ancient weapons. Causing the 3-year drought, instigating civil conflict, and framing the Alabasta Kingdom were all groundwork laid for this step. If his identity were to be exposed, everything he had worked for would be ruined. Have Miss 5 and Miss Valentine go. Arrest these two. Bring them back. Yes, President. The person responded and withdrew. I believe that with those two dispatched, Mr. 8 and Mr. Wednesday won't be able to escape. Robin, standing beside Crocodile, had a subtle glint in her beautiful eyes. The two had followed her, but she hadn't expected that after seeing Crocodile's true face. They were so shocked that they inadvertently revealed their presence and were discovered. This time, neither of them would escape disaster. I hope so. Crocodile exhaled a smoke ring before continuing. Robin, stay within the organization for this period. Don't go anywhere. Focus on deciphering the poneglyphs. Hearing this, a flicker of surprise appeared in Robin's eyes, but she still nodded, yes. President, a few hours later. In a desert region of the Alabasta Kingdom. Scorched yellow earth, and the blazing sun in the sky fiercely baked the ground. As a desert nation, Alabasta was hot most of the time, and the air was exceptionally dry. Yellow sand filled the sky, resembling a vast Gobi desert. A beautiful, capable woman with long blue hair tied in a ponytail and wearing a yellow shirt was fleeing for her life across the sandy ground. Beside her was a man with curly yellow hair falling onto his shoulders. It was Igaram, who had left Whiskey Peak 2 days earlier. Vi. Princess Vivi, you must go that way. I'll draw Mr. 5 and the others away from this direction. Igaram gritted his teeth and told Vivi. No, I won't leave you behind. Vivi looked anxious, determined not to abandon anyone by her side. Princess, your identity absolutely cannot fall into Crocodile's hands. Igaram urged. After leaving Whiskey Peak and returning to the kingdom, he hadn't expected things to change so drastically in 2 days. The massive power hidden in the shadows turned out to be Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai. The internal conflict within the kingdom was also instigated and controlled by him. Now, being chased by Mr. 5 and Mr. Valentine from the organization, if they didn't split up, neither of them would escape. Furthermore, he was already injured and could no longer continue fleeing. Staying with Vivi would only hold her back. You are the hope of the Alabasta Kingdom. Igaram continued to plead. No, I can't leave you here alone. Tears welled up in Vivi's large eyes, and her voice was filled with self-reproach. You only got hurt because of me. Vivi helped Igaram, and despite his protests, she settled him beneath a large rock. Seizing the opportunity to catch his breath, a thought suddenly flashed through Igaram's mind. He pulled out the den mushi he always kept on him. Vivi looked at the den mushi, her large eyes blinking with tears. "Igaram, what are you doing?" "A pirate I met previously at Whiskey Peak. He is very fast. If he can rush over, there might still be some hope. When he arrives, let him take you away." Since things had reached this point, he had nothing else to rely on. "A pirate?" Vivi's beautiful eyes widened in disbelief. Crocodile was also a pirate. Even if this person came, he probably wouldn't help them. He might even take advantage of their misfortune. "Igaram, we can't trust pirates. We can still escape." Igaram shook his head. If the current situation continued, they would definitely be caught by Mr. 5 and Mr. Valentine. Escaping was simply impossible. This den mushi might be their only chance to fight back. Without any hesitation, Igaram connected the den mushi. At the same time, on the other side, blur blur, blur blur. Roxiu, who was secretly on a pirate ship, enjoying the sea breeze, was startled by the sudden ringing of the den mushi. Reaching into his pocket to take it out, his expression involuntarily hardened. 2 days had passed, and he thought this den mushi would never ring again. He was about to toss it into the sea to feed the fish. He didn't expect a call to come through at this moment. He reached out and answered it. An anxious voice immediately came through the den mushi. After listening, Roxio couldn't help but let the corners of his mouth curl up slightly. It seems the devil fruit is within reach. With a bang, he lifted his foot and tapped the deck. A sudden explosion sounded on the ship. The crew members on the pirate ship heard the noise and rushed over. When they saw a stranger had appeared on the ship at some unknown time, they instantly became highly vigilant. "Alabasta Kingdom, where is the location, Princess Vivi? I can hold them off for a little longer. If you don't leave now, it will really be too late." Igaram put down the den mushi and pleaded with Vivi once more. As for whether Roxiu would actually come, he wasn't truly confident. This was not something he could decide. All Igaram could do now was use all his strength to help Vivi escape from here. Boom! Just then, a fierce explosion sounded near them, immediately followed by a person's voice. "Trying to leave? None of you are escaping today." A guy who looked very trendy, sporting an afro, wearing loafer shoes, a gray trench coat, and sunglasses, revealed himself on the yellow sand. "That's right. Tell us, where is our little spy planning to run off to?" At the same time, a mocking voice came from the sky. A stylishly dressed woman holding an umbrella was floating in the air. Chapter 31, Killing the Baroque Works Members. The former is Mr. 5, who possesses the bomb fruit, and the latter is Miss Valentine, who possesses the kilo fruit. Vivi watched the two people catching up to her, her silver teeth clenched. "They found me. Is everything I've done up until now going to end here?" Igaram struggled to his feet from the ground, blocking Vivi, intending to use his body to fend off the attack and buy Vivi a chance to escape. As the captain of the Alabasta Kingdom Royal Guard, even if he only had one breath left, he had to ensure the safety of the princess. How touching. Such a loyal guy, it's a pity he's not working for Baroque Works. Miss Valentine curled her lip into a sneer and mocked him. Why waste so many words on a spy? Just cripple him and take him back. Mr. 5 spoke with his hands in his pockets, indicating that he saw no opponent and wanted a quick resolution. The president is waiting for our good news. TCH, Miss Valentine pouted, shedding the casual and frivolous expression on her face. Thump, 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 Igaram shielded Vivi and retreated backward. The expressions on both their faces were incredibly solemn at this moment. They had already experienced the strength of Miss Valentine and Mr. 5. Moreover, one of them was severely injured right now. They were now like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Whoosh! Just then, a fierce sound of air friction suddenly rang out on the yellow sand ground. Immediately after, yellow sand flew everywhere. A black figure, moving at extreme speed, was like a bolt of lightning. In the blink of an eye, he landed between Vivi and Miss Valentine, stirring up a wave of sand. "Who are you?" After the yellow sand dissipated, Mr. Five looked up at the mysterious figure who had suddenly appeared, his face etched with vigilance. Black hair, black eyes, 2 meters tall, wearing a black trench coat. He didn't look like someone from Alabasta. It seems. I've never seen him before. It wasn't just him, the eyes of the other three were also focused on Roxio at this moment. Everyone's expression was different. Visible joy appeared on Igaram's face. He hadn't expected that with just one call, this pirate from the East Blue would actually come. What terrifying speed this was! Vivi looked slightly confused, but she understood that this person must be the pirate Igaram had mentioned. Her palms were drenched in sweat, and her emotions were complicated. Will this really work? Hey! This isn't the place for you to be. Miss Valentine hovered in mid-air, shouting at Roxio. Roxio didn't even look at her, slowly exhaling a warm breath, muttering to himself. I finally made it. To get here in the shortest time possible, he fully activated the power of the rabbit talisman. This was to prevent any accidents along the way. From the current situation, everything was still in time. Damn it! How dare he ignore me? Miss Valentine saw that Roxio had no intention of responding. She gritted her teeth. As an agent of Baroque Works, she had always been high and mighty. She had never received such treatment before. In her heart, she had already pronounced a death sentence for Roxio. Using the kilo fruit, Miss Valentine floated above Roxio. Her weight, originally 1 kilogram, instantly transformed into 10,000 kilograms. This massive mass, under the effect of gravity, erupted with terrifying speed and energy. Roxio's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Miss Valentine's attacking method was truly naughty. Does she want to play human pyramid with me? Although he thought this, his speed was not slow at all. Before Miss Valentine could smash into the ground, Roxio's figure had already disappeared from the spot. Boom! The ground shook, erupting with a loud noise. Miss Valentine saw her attack hit nothing, crawled out of the sand pit, and spat out the sand in her mouth. The anger on her face intensified. Miss Valentine, your attack method is too monotonous. You won't hit this guy, Mr. Five said with a dismissive curl of his lip. As he spoke, he reached into his nose, dug around, and then flicked something toward Roxio. Check this out. Roxio's eye twitched, and he used his speed to dodge again. Boom! Behind him, a dazzling light erupted. Yellow sand swept up, and air currents rushed out. As an ability user of the bomb fruit, this thing wasn't meant for humiliation. Roxio watched the two strike one after the other, and his expression couldn't help but change. He said coldly, "You either scram right now and tell that crocodile guy to leave the Alabasta Kingdom, or you die here." Miss Valentine and the explosive-haired man exchanged glances, as if they had misheard. Then, the two of them burst into laughter. Tell the president to scram out of the Alabasta Kingdom? Kill us here? Where did this reckless youth come from to dare say such words? It was simply outrageous. That's hilarious. Our president is one of the Shichibukai. Do you think you can afford to provoke him? The explosive-haired man felt like he had heard the funniest joke in the world. After a bout of shaking, wild laughter, all that remained was anger. The anger of being looked down upon by some unknown brat. They, dignified members of Baroque Works, were being slighted. Unforgivable. Foot bomb. Mr. Five stopped laughing, and his aura suddenly intensified. He raised his foot and kicked toward Roxio. With the power of the Paramecia-type bomb fruit, any part of his body could explode. Anyone who was kicked would either die or be severely injured. Roxio looked up at the figure coming straight at him. It was close enough to touch. The next moment, Roxio evaded with incredible speed and instantly appeared behind Mr. Five. He raised his hand, clenched his fist, and then smashed it toward Mr. Five's back. Thud! The speed was too fast. The opponent had no time to react. His chest cavity was instantly pierced through. Blood immediately spurted out. Mr. Five! Miss Valentine cried out in disbelief, watching the scene. Having partnered with Mr. Five for so many years, Miss Valentine was very clear about his strength. He had hardly ever encountered a difficult opponent. He could usually blast the opponent within a few moves. But now, he was instantly killed by this person who came from nowhere. What was I laughing about just now? Fear. After the shock, fear instantly surged into her heart. Even Mr. Five was instantly killed. How could she possibly win with her strength? At this moment, Miss Valentine had only one thought. Run fast. Go back and report to the president. The kilo fruit was instantly triggered, and her weight drastically decreased. She floated high into the sky. Boom! However, the next second, accompanied by a loud noise, Roxio leaped from the ground into midair. He smashed a punch toward Miss Valentine. Blood splattered. Miss Valentine's eyes widened as she looked down at her pierced body. With a face full of unwillingness, she plummeted toward the ground. Chapter 32, Accepting the Commission. 3 Devil Fruits. After Roxio killed the 2 men, he shook the blood off his hands. With his current strength, dealing with 2 members of Baroque works was simply too easy. Igaram and Vivi were already dumbfounded watching him deal with their pursuers so cleanly and decisively. They just died. Like that? This is too strong. The 2 organization members who had left them helpless and without options. Under this man, they couldn't even withstand a single move. This terrifying speed and formidable power. Unbelievable. Gulp. He swallowed hard. Igaram looked at Roxio, his heart filled with shock. Immediately afterward, ecstasy surfaced. Roxio's strength was far greater than he had imagined. How could this be a pirate with a bounty of 60 million? On the Grand Line, even those great pirates with bounties of several hundred million might not possess such terrifying strength. One must realize, the ones just killed were 2 devil fruit ability users. He was now extremely grateful for his decision to give the Den Den Mushi to Roxio. He believed this was the wisest decision he had ever made during his time as the captain of the Royal Guard in the Kingdom of Alabasta. Hello, I am Vivi. Princess Vivi's large eyes sparkled as she mustered her courage to introduce herself to Roxio. Roxio's formidable strength gave her hope. Hope of saving the kingdom from dire straits. If Crocodile were to face this man, he might no longer seem so unbeatable. Roxio said indifferently. Then, he looked toward Igaram. It seems you have already communicated. Using devil fruits as compensation. Igaram's eyes paused. When he made that call to Roxio, it was an attempt made out of desperation. He hadn't even thought about devil fruits. He hadn't even mentioned this matter to the royal family members yet. But, the premise of not mentioning it was, not having fully witnessed Roxio's strength. Judging by the strength Roxio had displayed so far, even using devil fruits as compensation would be completely worth it. Devil fruits? Princess Vivi was slightly confused. Igaram explained the sequence of events. Vivi suddenly realized. So, the man before her had already been communicating regarding the kingdom's affairs. This was simply wonderful. A flicker of determination crossed Vivi's eyes, and she looked at Roxio, saying, if you can truly help the kingdom resolve this crisis, the kingdom of Alabasta is willing to offer devil fruits as compensation. Although devil fruits were incredibly valuable things on the sea, in her view, no matter how precious, they were just inanimate objects. Inside the kingdom of Alabasta, she had the subjects she loved, parents who loved her, and friends who protected her. These were the most precious things. If Roxio could truly deal with Baroque works, devil fruits would naturally not be a problem. 3. Roxio nodded, and then stated a number. 3 devil fruits, in exchange for helping the kingdom of Alabasta deal with Crocodile. Considering the rarity of devil fruits, even within a kingdom, they wouldn't have much stock. This was the quantity Roxio proposed after careful consideration. It wouldn't put the kingdom of Alabasta in a difficult position. And he could also receive the compensation he expected. Hearing Roxio's request, Vivi's two bright, watery eyes widened slightly. 3 of them. 3 devil fruits. Although it didn't sound like much. For the current kingdom of Alabasta, it was actually their entire reserve. After a moment of silence, Vivi bit her silver teeth, paused, and then agreed, 3 devil fruits. I promise you. Igaram's expression changed. 1 was acceptable. 2 were barely manageable. But this was 3 devil fruits. It was equivalent to emptying out the entire royal family's coffers. If Roxio's operation failed this time, the entire kingdom of Alabasta, lacking these 3 devil fruits, would have no chance of turning the tables. But, he also understood. If they didn't make this transaction, the kingdom would similarly have no way out. They could only stake this hope on a person they had only met twice. To be honest, this feeling was very unpleasant. But, what other choice was there? Taking a gamble might just open up a path to survival. I hope that when the time comes, you won't go back on your word. Roxia said. We won't. If the kingdom's crisis is resolved, the 3 devil fruits will be presented in full. Vivi quickly stated. Roxio's strength was nearly comparable to Crocodile's. Only someone insane would provoke Roxio again after resolving the crisis. Did they think the kingdom hadn't experienced enough turmoil? Good. Time and location. Roxio nodded and continued. The location is Baroque works. The sooner the better. Vivi said. The current situation was a race against time. The faster the crisis was resolved, the better it would be for the people of Alabasta. I was talking about the time and location for the compensation. Roxio raised an eyebrow. Vivi froze. Her face then flushed slightly, realizing she had misunderstood his meaning. She immediately continued. After the crisis is settled. Inside the royal palace. All right. Roxio nodded. This matter was now settled. Next was dealing with Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, who possessed the Logiotype Sansan fruit. Prepare the 3 devil fruits. Wait for my news. Dropping this sentence, Roxio headed towards the center of the kingdom of Alabasta. In the blink of an eye, he vanished amidst the swirling yellow sand. Igaram watched the vanished Roxio and said, Princess Vivi, do you truly believe he can do it? Vivi pondered for a moment, then spoke with a resolute yet sorrowful tone. His strength might bring the kingdom a sliver of hope. Moreover, our identities have now been exposed. Do we have any other choice? There were simply no other choices. From joining Baroque works, to having her identity exposed, and now being hunted. As a princess of a nation, she had never truly had a choice. On this vast sea, a princess was fundamentally unimportant. 1 Shichibukai was enough to crush a kingdom. This was a world where strength was paramount. The world government, the marine, and pirates all operated this way. Igaram sighed heavily, lowering his head in silence. He said nothing more. This was the sorrow of a weak nation. Chapter 33, Meeting the Shichibukai Crocodile. Alabasta Kingdom. Baroque works. Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, sat on a bench, a signature cigar dangling from his mouth. Robin stood behind him. Who the Sand Crocodile took a puff of his cigar, exhaling a comfortable cloud of smoke. His arm, cast in a golden hook, tapped rhythmically on the table. Once I deal with these two spies, Igaram and Wednesday, there will be no more obstacles to the plan. I truly look forward to that moment. A smile played on his lips, and thinking of potentially acquiring Pluton, one of the three ancient weapons, Crocodile's eyes gleamed with uncontrollable excitement. As a man who dreamed of becoming the pirate king and standing at the pinnacle of this world, the mere position of a Shichibukai could not satisfy his ambition. With Pluton in hand, even if he were to face the Whitebeard pirates again, he would not be defeated. Robin's beautiful eyes flickered, her mind racing with thoughts. The current situation was indeed as Crocodile had described. Internal strife was intensifying, and the king was being criticized by everyone. Without the ability to defeat this Shichibukai, no one could save the Alabasta kingdom. At this moment, she couldn't help but ponder her future plans. She certainly didn't want to reveal the information about Pluton to this ambitious fellow in front of her. These two, Mr. Five and Miss Valentine. Why aren't they back yet? Crocodile snorted coldly. Chasing down two weaklings, in his opinion, should have taken no time at all. Now, so much time had passed. Yet, there was still no news. Could it be that these two also want to defect? The highly suspicious Sand Crocodile frowned, involuntarily considering this question. The actions of Igaram and Wednesday caused Crocodile, who already lacked trust in others, to start reacting defensively. He saw everyone as a spy. Just then, a clear voice suddenly came from outside. The voice was heard before the person was seen. No need to wait. They won't be coming back. Hearing this unfamiliar voice, Crocodile's mouth twitched. A fierce glint flashed in his eyes. What exactly is going on? Is the world too crazy now, or is it that I, the Shichibukai Sand Crocodile, can no longer wield my hook? First, there were two spies trying to disrupt his plan, and that was enough. Now, some unknown fellow just waltzed into his organization, making grandiose statements. And saying that two of his executives wouldn't be coming back? Unacceptable. He must let this person know who truly rules the Alabasta kingdom. In such a vast world, why could there only be 7 Shichibukai? Not just him, but Robin, who stood behind him, was also utterly confused. She couldn't help but guess this person's identity. Could it be another spy from the organization? The previous two were able to see Crocodile's true face because she had let them. Why would this person actively jump out at such a time? And right in front of the Sand Crocodile. It was truly not a good choice. Tap. Tap. After a few words, footsteps slowly approached from outside the door, and the Sand Crocodile and Robin looked towards the entrance. A man, 2 meters tall, with black hair and black eyes, wearing a black trench coat, appeared there. Crocodile stared intently at this man who dared to provoke him. Many images flashed through his mind, but he couldn't match any figure to this face. Was he someone who, by luck, hid in the shadows and colluded with spies? Now knowing there was no turning back, was he acting out of desperation? Someone whose name he hadn't heard was just a weakling and posed no threat whatsoever. Crocodile's lips curled into a sneer, as he scrutinized the young man before him with a condescending gaze. Kid. Who are you? Are you a partner of that spy, Wednesday? At a time like this, you still dare to cause trouble on my turf. Who I am isn't important. What's important is, you get out of the Alabasta kingdom and go back to your own sea. Otherwise, I'll send you to impel down. Roxia said with a smile, revealing a set of perfectly white teeth. He seemed to bear no ill will, but his words were incredibly arrogant. The Sand Crocodile's face stiffened. Why did he feel like this guy's words might actually come true? But soon. He vigorously shook his head. Damn fellow. What kind of person was he? One of the Shichibukai. It must be an illusion. Even if someone from Marineford came, they wouldn't dare speak to him like that. To send him to impel down. This young upstart was truly ignorant of his place. Brat! Do you know my identity? Crocodile twisted his neck, stood up from his chair, and stared intently at Roxiu. At this moment, Robin had observed Roxiu for a long time and finally recognized his identity. He seems to be the pirate who has been gaining prominence in the East Blue recently. He killed the pirate Arlong and a Marine branch colonel. His bounty is 60 million berries. His name is Roxiu, nicknamed the Blood Hand Butcher. The strongest rookie in the 4 seas. Hearing the information Robin provided, the sand crocodile laughed. A laugh full of disdain. I thought it was some big shot, but it's just a little punk. You killed a weakling Arlong in the East Blue and slaughtered a Marine branch colonel. You don't actually think you're strong now, do you? This is the Grand Line, not your feeble East Blue. And you are now facing a Shichibukai. As he spoke, he took a step forward. Swirling sand immediately swept out from where he landed. Then, with each step he took, more sand gathered. A powerful aura, overwhelming, surged towards Roxiu. I need to clarify. I am not a pirate. Roxiu stood his ground, like a straight spear. His sharp aura soared into the sky. Completely unaffected. Ha 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 ha. Brat. Does that even matter? The sand. Crocodile couldn't help but laugh, thinking the young man in front of him would come up with something profound. This person in front of him was already so scared by his aura that he was babbling nonsense. However, just this wasn't enough. He had to die here. He reined in his smile. The sand crocodile raised his arm, then brought it down sharply. Desert Spada. Chapter 34, Roxiu vs. Crocodile. Instantly, his arm transformed into a sand blade, becoming a terrifying crescent-shaped scimitar. It was imbued with a fierce killing intent. Roxiu raised an eyebrow. The next moment, he leaped gracefully, dodging the sand crocodile's attack. Landing in another spot. Boom! The sand-transformed scimitar struck the ground directly, erupting with a loud roar. The hard ground was torn in half down the middle, revealing a terrifying gully. The sand crocodile's mouth, where he held his cigar, showed a hint of surprise. He had expected to end the fight in one move, but he didn't expect this guy to be able to dodge his attack. Moreover, his speed was even a bit elusive to him. However, that alone wasn't enough to surprise him. But considering Roxiu's current age, this was much better than some of the deadweight agents in his organization. Suddenly, the sand crocodile couldn't help but feel a desire to recruit him. It might not be bad if this Roxiu could work for him. Kid, your strength is pretty good. How about joining my Baroque works? I can directly make you a senior agent. The sand crocodile exhaled a smoke ring and said, and your status will be recognized by the Marine, so your bounty might even be revoked. Not interested. Hearing this, Roxiu said calmly. You're ungrateful. Do you really think I'm all talk? Hearing Roxiu's resolute refusal, the sand crocodile's face stiffened. The sand crocodile had always been extremely arrogant. Personally inviting a junior was already him lowering himself. He didn't expect such a merciless refusal. Robin was equally surprised. Does this guy really not know the strength of a Shichibukai? Or is his head too hard? The rookie king of the 4 seas still had an insurmountable gap compared to a Shichibukai standing at the peak of the Grand Line. Even if he dodged the first move, it didn't mean much. Robin knew this so-called president's strength all too well. Such a good chance to survive had just been wasted. It would have been better to accept first, then lie low and grow. Robin couldn't help but sigh for Roxiu in her heart. What a pity. Ground dryness. The sand crocodile was too lazy to waste any more words. His aura surged fiercely. His right fist turned into sand, then violently slammed into the ground. Boom! The moment his arm touched the ground, an earth-shattering change occurred. The entire ground cracked, and the surrounding buildings were drained of moisture, turning into sand and merging into it. The powerful Devil Fruit ability seemed to want to turn everything into sand. And then engulf Roxiu. Feeling the softening ground beneath his feet, Roxio clenched his fist. The next moment, his figure shot out like a drawn sword. A powerful aura instantly erupted. Puff puff puff, the surrounding sand was blown away, emitting continuous popping sounds. Then, buzz, an invisible series of afterimages swept across the golden sands, kicking up a sky full of dust. Charging towards the sand crocodile. Hiss so fast. Watching Roxio, unhindered by the yellow sand, charging towards him. Crocodile frowned. The previous attack was a large-scale ability. Its purpose was to restrict Roxio's speed. But he didn't expect this ordinary-looking brat to be able to break through it instantly. Crescent Moon Sand Dune. Without any hesitation, the sand crocodile leaped into the air. His body twisted violently from the waist, his arm gathering strength. In a very short time, he burst out with extreme speed. His arm swung like a whip, lashing towards Roxio. At the same time, under the effect of his devil fruit ability, his arm transformed into a giant sand blade. It shimmered silver under the intense sunlight. Whoosh! Roxio had already been on guard. The moment the giant sand blade swept over, the speed of the rabbit talisman was unleashed. His speed reached an extreme, disappearing before the sand crocodile. One of the rabbit talisman's abilities, teleportation. When he reappeared, he was already at his side. He raised his fist and punched towards the sand crocodile's side. Almost subconsciously, the sand crocodile felt a sudden, inexplicable chill from his waist. His face immediately changed drastically. He immediately activated his devil fruit ability, turning half of his body into sand. Boom! In a blink of an eye, Roxio's fist landed on the sand crocodile, erupting with a loud bang. Under the immense force, the sand crocodile was sent flying backward like a kite with a broken string. Half of his body was blasted apart. After flying for about 10 meters, he barely managed to stabilize himself. As expected of a Shichibukai, his strength is much greater than Smoker's. Roxio thought to himself, looking at Crocodile who had stabilized himself. It had been a period, neither long nor short, since his last encounter with Smoker. Roxio's strength, as his fusion with the talismans grew higher. Naturally, his power soared. If the opponent of that attack had been Smoker, the other party wouldn't have even had time to elementalize before being hit head-on. But the sand crocodile still managed to react at the crucial moment. At this moment, the sand crocodile stood to the side. The half of his body that had been blasted away was healing at a visible speed. But his face was so gloomy it looked like it could drip water. He, a dignified Shichibukai, was actually hit head-on by a rising brat from the East Blue, and even had half his body blown off. It was simply a great humiliation. If word got out, he would be laughed at. But despite feeling humiliated, while angry, he also couldn't help but be greatly shocked. This kid in front of him was a bit uncanny. His strength, his speed. It was not what someone his age should possess. He was like a monster. After a brief exchange, the sand crocodile abandoned his condescending view of Roxio. He had to re-evaluate this rookie from the East Blue, preparing to face him with his full power. He took a deep puff from his signature cigar. The sand crocodile's aura rose steadily, reaching a peak. Sandstorm. As his voice fell, in the sand crocodile's palm, a tiny sandstorm gathered, then it grew larger and larger, shaking violently. The surrounding sand, wooden boards, tables, sofas, rocks, all were swept up by the sandstorm at this moment, then merged into the yellow sand. In just a few breaths, the sandstorm, originally palm-sized, had become a massive sandstorm. Buzz, as the sandstorm gathered, the sand crocodile revealed a cackling smile and pushed the sandstorm towards Roxio's location. Before the sand crocodile made his move, Robin had already left the area where the two were fighting. Now seeing Crocodile use this move, her pupils couldn't help but constrict violently. This guy Roxy was actually so strong, to be able to push Crocodile to this extent. It seems, her previous judgment was mistaken. Could it be that Roxio can really defeat the sand crocodile? But soon, Robin shook her head. How is that possible? The moment this thought surfaced, she suppressed it. Having witnessed Crocodile's terrifying strength, she dismissed this possibility from the bottom of her heart. Meanwhile, the citizens of Alabasta Kingdom at this time also noticed the terrifying scene in the city center. Their faces all changed drastically, and they looked towards it. Chapter 35, How is that possible? You're immune to my devil fruit ability. It wasn't just them. The executives within Baroque Works also noticed the situation at Spider Cafe. It's the president's ability. What's going on? Why is the president fighting someone? Is there anyone in the Alabasta Kingdom who can make the president get serious? Let's go, head over there first. Several high-ranking agents led by Mr. One rushed toward the location with suspicion and surprise. In the Alabasta Kingdom, they had been operating secretly for so long. They couldn't be clearer about the country's situation. The few people with relatively strong power were just a few executives of the Kingdom Guard. But just dealing with internal strife kept them extremely busy. They truly couldn't figure out who would be worth the president making a move. Although they didn't know. But the closer they got to the battle, the more uneasy they felt. It seemed, the person fighting the president was not simple at all. Meanwhile, on the other side, the massive sandstorm gathered, growing even larger in just a few breaths. It arrived before Roxiu. The raging energy, carrying sand capable of destroying everything, was like a ferocious beast baring its fangs and claws. Instantly, it swallowed Roxiu. Bang bang bang. Inside the sandstorm, continuous sounds rang out. The loud noise roared and spread continuously, like an earthquake erupting deep underground, filling the sky with sand and dust. Sand Crocodile looked at Roxiu, who had been swept up by the sand. His expression immediately brightened. A brat is just a brat. You still can't escape my grasp. Wait to be sucked dry by the sand. The unique ability of the Suna Suna no Mi. Besides being able to turn objects it touches into sand, it has another extremely powerful feature. That is, when the sand touches flesh and blood, it can instantly draw the moisture out of the opponent's body. In an instant, turning them into a dehydrated corpse. A body without moisture support naturally loses all possibility of movement. And Roxiu was swept into the sandstorm. At this moment, in Crocodile's view, regardless of whether he could get out, without a doubt, he would definitely be affected by the sand imbued with the devil fruit ability. This battle has already ended here. Coldly watching the sweeping storm, the sand crocodile's slightly anxious heart finally settled. Don't even mention it. When Roxio had blasted away half his body earlier, a sense of crisis he hadn't felt in a long time truly arose in his heart. The last time he felt this way was decades ago, when he challenged Whitebeard. After all, there won't be many men as strong as Whitebeard. I was actually almost intimidated by a brat. Crocodile, you are one of the Shichibukai. Sand Crocodile shook his head, speechless at the sense of crisis he had perceived earlier. Taking a deep puff of his cigar, the Sand Crocodile's imposing aura rose again. He prepared to strike. To end this absurd battle. However, right at this moment, thud! A figure, like a ghost, stood behind him. Without any unnecessary movement, a punch slammed into the Sand Crocodile's back. Crack! The sound of bones breaking immediately rang out. Crocodile's pupils constricted violently. He fiercely looked back. He met a pair of sharp black eyes. A mouthful of blood sprayed from the Sand Crocodile's mouth. How is that possible? He stared blankly at Roxiu. When did Roxiu get beside him? But, before he could think further, His body, driven by the penetrating force, shot backward. Bang bang bang. He successively pierced through more than a dozen rocks before barely managing to stop. At this moment, those high-ranking agents from the organization just arrived at the battlefield. As soon as they arrived, they saw their president, who had been punched until he spat blood. Every single one of them looked as if they had seen a ghost. Utterly bewildered. President is injured. Damn it. Who is this guy? Well, it seems to be a newcomer from the East Blue, huh? You're telling me this is a newcomer? They watched the scene before them in disbelief. Their worldview seemed to be violently shaken at this moment. The invincible and incredibly powerful president was actually injured by a newcomer. Are the young people coming to the Grand Line this fierce nowadays? We need to buy the president some time. The hot-bodied Mississippi double finger snapped back to reality, adopting a fighting stance, ready to go head-to-head with Roxio. Don't! Mr. One quickly stopped Mississippi double finger's movement. Trust the president, he said gravely. If anyone among them understood the president best, it would definitely be him. As the strongest chief commander of Baroque works, he knew exactly what kind of person the president was. He possessed absolute confidence in his own strength. Extremely arrogant. He held the pride befitting a Shichibukai. If they went up to help now, they didn't know if the newcomer would beat them, but the president would definitely be the first to attack them. Moreover, someone who could injure the president. Their intervention would be useless. They might even hold him back. Sand Crocodile was unaware of his subordinate's thoughts. At this moment, he climbed up from the ground, feeling the stinging pain emanating from his internal organs. Fine beads of sweat appeared on his face. He didn't understand. The sandstorm clearly swept Roxio in just now, and he had been watching the situation inside, yet he hadn't seen Roxio emerge at all. Why was he able to appear beside him? And most importantly, why hadn't Roxio turned into a dehydrated corpse? His devil fruit ability had actually failed on him? These questions lingered in his mind, but he couldn't find any answers. Damn it! Where the hell did this guy come from? Sand Crocodile wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, clenching his jaw. His favorite cigar had fallen to the ground, covered in dust, looking as miserable as his current state. He can actually still stand up. At this moment, Roxio, who had landed a direct hit on his opponent, watched the Sand Crocodile get up from the ground and muttered. The physical fitness of people in this world is ridiculously strong. As for why he could leave the sandstorm without being affected, the reason was very simple. One of the horse talisman's abilities is to allow the holder to remove all abnormal effects caused by external forces within the body. But the Sand Crocodile couldn't figure this out. Nor did he need to figure it out. The next moment, Roxio tapped his toe on the ground. Boom! A sand pit about 10 meters in diameter appeared on the spot, and the surrounding sand rushed wildly into the center of the pit, like seawater pouring back. Roxio's figure quickly darted, attacking the Sand Crocodile. Desert Spada. Seeing Roxio approach, Crocodile's pupils constricted violently. He didn't have time to think about anything else. Enduring the intense pain in his body, both his arms instantly transformed into 4 incredibly sharp, massive sand blades. And he slashed forward. Chapter 36, Vivi, you're confused. But Crocodile's speed, in Roxio's eyes, was simply too slow. For great swords made of sand, they posed no threat whatsoever. Roxio's figure vanished again. This time, he appeared above Crocodile. He raised his hand and pressed down. Terrifying power, carrying energy as heavy as Mount Tai, made Crocodile's hair stand on end. Whoosh! Sand Crocodile's expression hardened. He didn't intend to clash head-on with Roxio. This time, he learned his lesson. In an instant, he elementalized his entire body. Then, he disappeared into the sky full of yellow sand. Looking up, there was only endless sand, and not a trace of sand crocodile could be seen. Roxiu smiled. The observation hockey he had just learned seemed to be useful now. Time to test it out. To see how effective this hockey was. Thinking of this, he stopped his movements. His already keen five senses instantly became even more acute. Everything around him was captured in Roxiu's eyes. Crocodile's whereabouts were naturally among them. 11 o'clock to the left. He thought to himself. The next moment, Roxiu stepped on the yellow sand, leaving a trail of footprints. Suddenly, he arrived at Sand Crocodile's hiding place. His arm flexed, muscles bulging. Boom! He slammed his fist into the ground. Immediately, a huge pit appeared. Sand flew out, sweeping in all directions like sharp knives. Among them, a pile of sand with two eyes, filled with inexplicable fear, quickly moved to another location. However, he had just concealed himself. When Roxiu stepped over again, just like last time, it was still a simple punch. Slammed into the ground. Sand Crocodile's eyes, left in the sand, were so gloomy they seemed to drip water. The next moment, his figure vanished again. But, he was still found with extreme precision by Roxiu. Robin blinked her beautiful eyes, completely stunned. Sand Crocodile was actually being chased and beaten, just like that. You flee, I pursue, you pursue, I flee. After dozens of cycles. Finally, Sand Crocodile couldn't hold on anymore. Elementalization requires stamina, and continuous elementalization is equivalent to an ability user constantly attacking, requiring a continuous expenditure of energy and stamina. What's more, constantly elementalizing his entire body while also having to resist Roxiu's attacks. Desert Sunflower. A furious roar sounded. Near a sand pit, a figure suddenly erupted. As soon as he finished speaking, a giant quicksand pit, as large as a dune, appeared beneath Roxiu's feet. Like an unnamed coffin in the desert. Capable of devouring all life within it. Roxiu felt the sand and stones sinking beneath his feet, his eyelids lowered. The next moment, his aura suddenly surged. Violent energy poured into his legs. The quicksand, capable of swallowing everything, was now under Roxiu's feet. Like flat ground. Suddenly, he crossed several meters and appeared before Sand Crocodile. He raised his hand and slammed it down. Danger. Extremely dangerous. Sand. Crocodile felt the aura from Roxiu, his hair standing on end. A chill rose from the soles of his feet. Like a poisonous snake crawling up his spine. Straight to his brain. However, the continuous release of powerful moves had already consumed a lot of his stamina. At this moment, Crocodile's reaction was a little slower than before. But even that little bit was enough to be fatal. He had just wanted to elementalize and dodge Roxiu's frontal attack. But it was already too late. Boom! Roxiu slammed his palm down, hitting Sand Crocodile's arm. Crackling. The sound of shattering echoed continuously. The golden hook on his arm was forcibly snapped off. The residual force vibrated into Sand Crocodile's body, sending him flying directly. President. The agents of Baroque Works, seeing this scene, were all greatly shocked. Bang bang bang. Thump thump thump. Sand Crocodile's body, like a shot put thrown by someone, smashed through several distant houses. Before finally stopping, he spat out another mouthful of fresh blood. Sand Crocodile crawled out of the collapsed house, looking at his broken arm. Rage surged directly into his brain. He completely ignored his injuries. The next moment, he charged at Roxiu again. Erosion cycle, meanwhile. On the other side. In the royal palace of Alabasta Kingdom. The king of Alabasta sat on his high seat, listening to Vivi's report from below. After Princess Vivi finished speaking, his face immediately became incredulous. Vivi, you said the mastermind behind Baroque works is Crocodile? Vivi said with a firm and certain tone, yes, father, he has been secretly orchestrating everything, stirring up internal strife in the country, and then taking the opportunity to seize control of the kingdom's government. Vivi's words made the usually gentle king's body tremble violently. Why would he do such a thing? He's one of the Shichibukai. Then, his expression grew even uglier. A Shichibukai stirring up trouble in the kingdom, orchestrating all of this. This made an already difficult situation even worse. But someone has already agreed to take action against Crocodile. Vivi continued, telling her father about the agreement with Roxiu. What? The king of Alabasta's face immediately changed after hearing Vivi's explanation, and he shot up from his chair. You really traded 3 devil fruits with a rookie pirate? They were one of the world government's member states, affiliated nations, under the jurisdiction and protection of the world government. How could they make a deal with a pirate? Vivi nodded heavily. Given the current situation, there's no other choice. Vivi, you're confused. The king of Alabasta sighed. These were 3 devil fruits. At a critical moment, they could raise the overall strength of the royal guard by a level. But they were used to make a deal with a pirate. Moreover, most importantly, that pirate was a rookie pirate from the East Blue. To have him deal with Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai. How could there be any chance of winning? From any perspective, this was an extremely unprofitable transaction. Even it was possible to attract pirates into the Alabasta kingdom, turning into another disaster. After all, pirates are untrustworthy fellows. How could a rookie pirate possibly contend with a Shichibukai? The king of Alabasta shook his head, wiping his worried old face. Vivi explained with a confident tone, he's not just a rookie pirate, his strength is very great, even against a Shichibukai, it's not entirely without a chance of winning. The scene of him instantly defeating 2 Baroque Works agents was deeply etched into Vivi's heart. And this might not even be his full strength. She was willing to trust Roxiu. Are the Marines useless? This strength only warrants a 60 million bounty? Say no more, let's leave it at that. The king of Alabasta interrupted Vivi's desire to continue speaking. He understood the strength of a Shichibukai all too well. They were individuals whom even those in Marineford had to respect. The mere fact that they could receive recognition from Marineford as pirates already spoke volumes. If this so-called rookie pirate had strength surpassing Crocodile, why wasn't he a Shichibukai? Clearly, in the king of Alabasta's view, Vivi had been deceived. However, just then, a deafening sound suddenly erupted inside the palace. Wood chips flew everywhere, and sand swept in. Had these rebels become so brazen as to cause trouble inside the palace? The king of Alabasta roared angrily. The rebel forces within the country had been active recently. There was a strong tendency toward war. If it wasn't for them, he couldn't imagine who else would be causing trouble in the palace at this time. A man dressed in a guard's uniform, holding a long spear, rushed in. Your Majesty. Crocodile, the Shichibukai, is fighting someone. The king of Alabasta's face froze. A Shichibukai, fighting someone? Vivi immediately reacted, her eyes lighting up. It's Roxiu, it must be him. Igaram, take some men and go look. Hearing Vivi's words, the king immediately made a decision. Yes, Your Majesty, at the same time. On a leisurely small island. The beach was sunny, and the fine sand was white. A huge parasol was stuck in the sand, with a table and a deck chair beside it. A den mushi was placed on the table, and lying on the deck chair was a man with short, curly black hair, wearing sunglasses and sporting stubble. He was wearing a yellow and white striped suit, looking completely relaxed. It was none other than Marine Headquarters Admiral Kizaru, who was ordered to pursue Roxiu. At this moment, he was enjoying the sea breeze and sunbathing. Enjoying a pleasant business trip. Blue-roo-baroo. Blue-roo-baroo. Just then, the den mushi on the table rang. Kizara raised an eyebrow and reached out to pick up the den mushi. Moshi, sure. Kizara's lazy voice came through. After a few seconds of silence, Kizaro raised an eyebrow. A careless smile appeared on his lips. The next moment, with a hum, a beam of light shot into the sky. In the blink of an eye, he vanished from the island. Only 2 sentences lingered in the wind where he had been. The Kingdom of Alabasta, ha! Finally found you, the Kingdom of Alabasta. The battle scene. Sand Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, was currently breathing heavily, kneeling on one knee upon the yellow sand. His teeth were grinding audibly. He looked at Roxyu in the distance, his expression extremely grim. Too strong. This rookie from the East Blue was too strong. This was the conclusion he, a Shichibukai, had reached after this period of fighting. No matter what moves he used during the fight, they were all easily neutralized by the opponent. There was simply no possibility of winning. Nor could he find any existing flaws. Terrifying speed, strength, and the ability to nullify his devil fruit power. A sense of powerlessness spread deep within his heart. Damn it! What in the world are the Marines doing? Are they all just dead weight? A pirate with such immense power was only given a 60 million bounty. Are they trying to get people killed? Sand Crocodile fiercely spat out a mouthful of bloody foam. He bitterly complained about the Marines in his heart. He truly couldn't understand. The young man before him possessed such formidable strength. Yet the Marines only gave him a 60 million bounty. It completely defied logic. If they had directly posted a bounty of several hundred million, he wouldn't have gone up and openly mocked him. Perhaps before the fight started, they could have sat down and had a good talk first. Now, he was truly in a predicament. At this moment, Roxyu, on the other side, clenched his fist. His stamina was rapidly depleting due to the fighting. Fortunately, the power of the talismans was supporting him. However, there was a hidden danger. The attribute. Conflict between the talismans still existed, and it became more apparent in more intense battles. Luckily, the activated horse talisman had a high degree of integration. If only other talismans coexisted, his body would have been ruined internally shortly after the fight began. He exhaled deeply, adjusting his physical condition. Roxyu looked at Sand Crocodile in the distance and couldn't help but sigh internally. Collecting these devil fruits is truly hard labor. The next moment, his figure moved again, vanishing from the spot, attacking Sand Crocodile once more. Seeing Roxyu attack again, the latter cursed him as a monster under his breath. His arm immediately spread open. Desert Grande Spada. As the words fell, a giant sword composed of sand instantly took shape. Boom, boom, boom. Roxyu arrived in front of the giant sword in a flash. He exerted strength in both arms, like rolling up a vast river or shaking a mountain range. Punch after punch landed heavily on the sand. In less than a single breath. Boom! The giant sword instantly shattered, sand filling the air before falling downwards. It was like a torrential downpour from the sky. Except this time, what was falling was sand and dust. What terrifying strength! Robin looked at Roxyu, astonishment flashing across her beautiful eyes. From the moment the two started fighting until now, Sand Crocodile had been overwhelmingly suppressed. Roxyu was repeatedly shattering her understanding. So, a Shichibukai could be defeated even if it wasn't by peak powerhouses like the Four Emperors or Admirals. Or perhaps, this person who emerged from the East Blue was already a peak powerhouse on this ocean. Get out of my way. In the battlefield, Sand Crocodile sought his attack pulverized. His face instantly twisted together. The long, narrow scar running across his face twitched like a living centipede. Roxyu merely glanced indifferently at Crocodile and sneered. That kind of anger wouldn't work. Then, he slammed a punch toward his face. It landed heavily on the opponent's cheek. Blood spurted from his mouth and nose. Sand Crocodile felt his head spinning, seeing several Roxias shaking their heads in front of him. His body involuntarily flew backward. President. Seeing this scene, the agents of Baroque Works could no longer hold back. Trust the president? What's there left to trust? He's been punched so hard he's seeing hallucinations. With a whoosh, several people stamped their feet on the ground and rushed toward Sand Crocodile. Mr. One was the first to charge. Catching the flying crocodile. I'll hold this guy off. Wake the president up. After giving these two instructions, he turned to face Roxiu. Your opponent now is me, he challenged Roxiu. Roxiu glanced at him, then ignored him. He then shifted his gaze toward the sky. This wasn't disdain for him, but because someone even stronger than Sand Crocodile was approaching from the other direction. Another master. Shoo! Before anyone was seen, a dazzling beam of light was seen striking toward the battlefield. Boom! A brilliant golden light exploded. Chapter 38, Admiral Kizaru. Then, a leisurely voice followed. Oh my, these newcomers nowadays are really terrifying. Roxiu and the others all looked up. They saw a cluster of yellow particles appear in mid-air, shimmering with dazzling light. Immediately after, the light gradually dissipated. A human figure appeared in the center, wearing a yellow and white suit and sunglasses. It was Kizaru, who had rushed over from the island at top speed. His Admiral Kizaru. At this moment, Crocodile, who had woken up after a simple treatment by the company's agent, couldn't help but narrow his pupils when he saw the newcomer. An existence even stronger than the Shichibukai. One of the three admirals of Marine Headquarters, Kizaru. A true world-class powerhouse. In the end, I was still discovered, huh? Then, Crocodile coughed violently, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Foam. His eyes held a hint of unwillingness. The admiral, who rarely made a move, actually came to Alabasta Kingdom this time. The problem was already obvious. His covert operations in Alabasta, the coup he had planned, had been discovered by Marine Headquarters. After all, in Alabasta Kingdom, besides himself, who else had the qualifications to make an admiral of Marine Headquarters personally take action? This time, there's no way to escape. Crocodile couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Then, he tremblingly took out a small wooden box from his arms. He opened it and pulled out a special cigar. And lit it for himself. Kizaru, known as the fastest man on the sea. Even in his prime, he couldn't have escaped from Kizaru's hands, let alone now, after being beaten into this state by Roxiu. The idea of escaping was completely abandoned. President. Are you all right? The agents in the company couldn't help but ask, looking at their somewhat dejected president. Baroque Works. From now on, let's disband. At this moment, Kizaru, who had arrived at the scene, noticed the severely injured Crocodile and raised an eyebrow slightly. Crocodile, who beat you up like this? As a Shichibukai, this is quite embarrassing. The leisurely voice came out again. The Shichibukai were formidable combatants on the sea, even a Marine Headquarters vice admiral might not be their match. Moreover, Crocodile possessed the Sansan fruit, an ability user of a Logio-type devil fruit. He knew better than anyone how difficult it was to injure him. Yet, someone stronger than a Marine vice admiral was beaten to this state here. Alabasta Kingdom truly had hidden depths. Was it Robin? His gaze swept over Robin. Upon seeing Kizaru, she instinctively took a step back, a fear born of instinct. Impossible. Kizaru ruled out this option in his mind. A little fellow who escaped from Ohara wouldn't possess such strength. Could it be those guys around Crocodile? Kizaru shook his head again. Finally, his gaze fell on Roxiu, and a look of suspicion appeared on his face. Although he admitted that Roxiu's strength was quite formidable, he could defeat Smoker. But Smoker and a Shichibukai were not on the same level at all. Roxia had high potential, but he shouldn't have grown to this extent yet. Moreover, he couldn't see any traces of battle on Roxiu. Even his clothes were clean. Could it be that there are others? Is it another of the 8 great demons? Kizaru thought of this possibility and curled his lips. Buzz. The next moment, powerful observation haki instantly spread out, taking in the surrounding environment, investigating every suspicious person, only to finally discover none. Crocodile, looking at Kizaru's expression, was somewhat confused. What does this mean? Could it be that Admiral Kizaru didn't come specifically to capture him? But in Alabasta Kingdom, who else was worth an admiral's deployment besides himself? Could it be for Roxiu? This rookie pirate who ran from the East Blue to the Grand Line? Thinking of this, he glanced at Kizaru. He found that his gaze was indeed on Roxiu. Immediately, he understood. Damn it! What is Roxiu's true identity, that he could make a Marine Admiral come specifically for him? A million questions popped into Crocodile's mind. Even he, as foolish as he was, now understood. The 60 million bounty the Marines placed on Roxiu was purely a cover-up. Roxiu must have done something in the East Blue that broke Marine headquarters' defenses. Or rather, Roxiu's own strength and identity made the old guys at Marine headquarters feel apprehensive. Otherwise, merely being a rookie pirate, it would be impossible for an admiral to be dispatched. Moreover, it was in this covert arrest manner. Admiral Kizaru. Who exactly is Roxiu? Crocodile directly asked Kizaru the question in his heart. He was a Shichibukai after all, he believed Kizaru would at least give him some face. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. This isn't something someone of your status can know, Kizaru said to Crocodile, his eyebrows drooping. Crocodile. Damn Kizaru, damn Marines. If I get my hands on Pluton, one of the ancient weapons, I'll blast you until there's nothing left. And that damned Roxiu. None of you will escape. I'll blow up the entire Marine headquarters. Roxiu, it seems it really was you. Kizaru completely ignored Crocodile and slowly spoke to Roxiu. So what if it was? Roxiu looked at Kizaru calmly. But he secretly let out a sigh of relief. He hadn't expected that this battle in Alabasta Kingdom would attract Kizaru, facing a Marine headquarters admiral personally. Although the opponent was the type who just went through the motions, the pressure was still immense. Moreover, his current physical condition was not at its peak. It's nothing, Kizaru said leisurely. Our Marine headquarters would like to invite you for a visit. Marine headquarters? Invite. Hearing Kizaru's words, Crocodile and Robin were instantly dumbfounded. What's going on? Marineford, Marine headquarters, what kind of place was that? That was the gathering place of the Marines' highest combat power, their strongest forces. But now, a Marine headquarters admiral actually personally told a pirate, inviting him to be a guest at Marine headquarters. The more one thought about it, the more terrifying it became. What exactly was Roxiu's identity? Or rather, what was Marine headquarters plotting? However, after a brief moment of astonishment, Crocodile's worries subsided somewhat. It could now be fully proven that Kizaru's arrival in Alabasta Kingdom was truly not for him. Which meant his covert actions had not been discovered. Thinking of this, Crocodile couldn't help but let out a breath. Although he had suffered a crushing defeat, he wouldn't be captured and sent to impel down to rot in prison. He secretly vowed in his heart, once he recuperated and obtained what he desired, he would make all these guys pay the price. Chapter 39, Roxiu vs. Kizaru. What if I say, I won't give you this face? Roxiu narrowed his eyes slightly and said, inviting himself to Marineford? Ha! Roxiu didn't believe that after he had infringed upon the Marines' prestige, they would be so kind. Perhaps, they had prepared a bed, waiting to dissect him. Oh my! These newcomers nowadays are not only terrifyingly strong, but also very polite. Kizaru drooped his eyebrows, pushed up his sunglasses, and took his other hand out of his pocket. Since that's the case, don't blame this old man for bullying you. He invited Roxyu because he was too lazy to act. Now that he was rejected, he had no choice but to use another method. Sengoku had given orders, he had to arrest this person and bring him back no matter what. As soon as he finished speaking, Kizaru raised his arm. He extended a finger. A yellow 5-star light condensed at his fingertip. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. After a series of piercing sounds appeared. A string of bright yellow light pillars shot towards Roxyu. And just before Kizaru made his move, facing an admiral, Roxyu, who was already prepared, instantly activated the rabbit talisman. He squatted on one leg, and the energy representing speed poured into his calf. He showed no carelessness in front of a marine admiral. He stomped his feet fiercely on the ground. Bang! A huge pit appeared on the ground. Roxio's figure vanished in an instant. The yellow laser boomed. Golden energy raged, its power extraordinary. It stirred up a huge cloud of smoke. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. When the smoke dissipated, the spot hit by the light beam was scorched. Roxio's figure stood to the side, completely unaffected. Oh my, such fast speed. Kizaru raised an eyebrow, seeing Roxio dodge his normal attack. However, in the next instant, he raised his right leg, light particles converged, and he said airily, "Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light?" Along with that lazy voice, Kizaru's right leg instantly elementalized, emitting a dazzling light that made it impossible to look directly at. Almost at the same time, a tall figure appeared behind Roxio at the speed of light. He kicked to the side. Roxio, who was mentally prepared for Kizaru's speed, his expression suddenly changed. He raised his arm to block the attack from his side. Dong! The immense impact kicked Roxio downwards at an extremely fast speed. Boom! A huge pit, over 10 meters in diameter, instantly exploded on the ground, and circles of spiderweb-like cracks appeared. Terrifying energy raged. The stirred-up air current, like ripples when a stone is thrown into the sea, spread outwards in layers. Wherever it passed, sand dunes and rocks were shattered. Damn it! I need to keep my distance from them. Crocodile, supported by his agent, said through gritted teeth. The energy unleashed by these two in battle could overturn everything here. Even a slight ripple would cause massive casualties. He was severely injured now and didn't want to die in vain. He still wanted to see Roxio beaten by the admiral to the point of being unable to care for himself. Yes, President. His agent helped Crocodile to a slightly safer spot with a clear view. Robin also pulled away. The battle continued. Inside the blasted pit, a black figure shot into the sky, like a black lightning bolt. Roxio landed to the side, his eyes piercing through the rolling smoke, directly at Kizaru. Is this the strength of an admiral? Compared to the Shichibukai crocodile, he's more than just one level stronger. Roxio thought to himself. Before, he fought Arlong in East Blue, then Smoker in Waterwave Island, and just now defeated Crocodile. He had won every battle. But facing a marine admiral, one of the peak powers of this sea, a tremendous pressure washed over him. Roxio suppressed the turbulent energy in his body and exhaled a turbid breath. This commission, the devil fruit, it's still too little. He shook off this unfounded thought. The next moment, his expression became solemn. He fully activated the rabbit talisman, pushing his speed to the extreme. Instantly, an afterimage streaked across the spot. Have you ever been hit by a sandbag-sized fist? Suddenly, a voice rang in Kizaru's ears. Kizaru's drooping eyes instantly widened. This, such a familiar tone. Such an annoying remark, and such fast speed. A straight punch, a mighty blow, as if to tear space apart. Bursts of explosive sounds constantly echoed. At the same time, A dazzling golden light flashed. Terrifying energy shook the sand on the ground, and the overwhelming yellow sand was like a sweeping storm. Rumble, rumble, the ground vibrated continuously. Roxio's body, like a long spear, plunged straight into the ground. The next instant, he shook off the sand and rocks covering his body and rose up. And at this moment, Kizaru's voice appeared again. That was close. You almost hit me. This is the perversity of the glint glint fruit. Roxio's heart tightened as he heard Kizaru's voice. The fastest man on the sea was indeed not that simple. Whoosh! At this moment, light flashed again. A beam of light condensed at Kizaru's fingertip and shot towards Roxio. Buzz! His aura suddenly intensified. The rabbit talisman was once again deployed. Roxio instantly moved dozens of meters away. The yellow light pillar barely grazed his skin, exploding into a yellow glow behind him. The air current surged. Smoke billowed. You really have some skills. Kizaru pouted, seeing Roxio instantly vanish under his nose. Back at Marineford, he had thought Smoker's claims were exaggerated because he had been defeated. Now it seemed to be true. However, this is still not enough. He put away his somewhat nonchalant expression. Kizaru's face uncharacteristically became solemn. Being able to almost hit him already posed a threat. The next moment, he tapped the ground with his toe. His figure lightly leaped into the air. He crossed his hands over his chest, his index fingers and thumbs interlocked. Yada no Kagami. As his voice fell, countless light bullets poured down from his hands like rain. The entire sky was bathed in a yellow glow. Roxio stood against the wind, feeling the dazzling yellow light bullets, and slowly exhaled a warm breath. The next instant, his eyebrows stood on end. 2 sharp rays of light shot from his eyes. Then, his originally tense body and bulging muscles rhythmically undulated under the full activation of the Ox Talisman. As if breathing on its own. The hairs on his body stood on end. Terrifying power at this moment filled his limbs and bones. Observation Haki activated. Speed, strength, perception. At this time, they perfectly merged together. The moment the light curtain fell, a faint light flashed in Roxio's eyes, and his body shot into the sky, passing through the gaps in the light curtain. His target was Kizaru. Rumble, rumble. Instantly, the pouring light bullets smashed into the ground. The large-scale ability covered the entire area below. The continuous roar of explosions echoed through the sky, and the sound waves spread out. Chapter 40, The fastest man in the world is indeed extraordinary. The entire Alabasta kingdom could clearly hear it. Everyone's faces were filled with terror. The royal army and the revolutionary rebels, who were originally fighting amongst themselves, all stopped their actions and looked up at the sky. Centered around Kizaru, the ground for 1,000 meters around was directly pulverized. The scattered sand became shimmering crystal-like substances. Deep cracks and numerous craters were spread all around. Not far away, Princess Vivi and the others from the Alabasta kingdom, who had just arrived, felt a violent sound pierce their ears, causing their heads to ache. Immediately after, their gazes involuntarily turned to the sky. In their line of sight, a man in a yellow suit stood there. This is Marine Headquarters Admiral Kizaru, the king of Alabasta Kingdom, exclaimed in astonishment. As one of the world government's member states, affiliated nations, he had met this admiral. At this moment, his eyes were wide open, filled with surprise and uncertainty. What was going on? Why would an admiral come to Alabasta Kingdom? And most importantly, why would an admiral act here? With such a wide-ranging attack skill, it seemed he was dueling someone. But Alabasta Kingdom. Who could be worthy of a Marine Headquarters Admiral's action? It wasn't just him, Princess Vivi and Igaram had the exact same reaction. What happened to the Alabasta Kingdom? Could it be the Admiral came for the kingdom's affairs? Igaram swallowed. But soon, he dismissed this conjecture. Because even Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, wouldn't warrant such serious treatment from a Marine Headquarters admiral. In midair, the battle was far from over. Yellow light bullets continuously gathered in Kizaru's hands, then poured out frantically, creating a curtain of yellow light. It's worth mentioning, among these light curtains, there was a conspicuous black figure. Like lightning. Extremely striking. In less than a breath's time, he passed through the hail of light bullets, getting close to Kizaru. A cold glint flashed in his black pupils. Without a word, he threw a punch. Ama no Murakumo sword. Kizaru frowned. His hands, crossed over his chest, instantly retracted. Light particles instantly formed, transforming into a dazzling long sword. Holding the light sword, he slashed down at Roxiu. Seeing this scene, Roxiu did not block. He merely adjusted his body slightly to dodge the fatal blow. His fist showed no sign of stopping, still smashing towards Kizaru. Put! His shoulder was struck by the Ama no Murakumo sword. Blood spurted wildly. But at the same time, a muffled thud also sounded on Kizaru's body. The punch forcefully sent Kizaru retreating dozens of meters. At this moment, the golden light dissipated. Roxiu's appearance fell into Princess Vivi's eyes. Her beautiful, clear eyes instantly widened, filled with disbelief. This person fighting Kizaru. Isn't he the one she personally hired not long ago? His strength has actually reached such a level? Princess Vivi's heart could only be described by 4 words at this moment. Utterly shocked. Although her intuition told her that Roxiu was very strong, even comparable to Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, she never would have thought that he could actually fight an admiral, and even repel him. However, when she saw Roxiu was injured, her little heart instantly leaped to her throat. Her eyes were filled with worry. This is truly troublesome. I was actually hit head-on. Whoosh! Kizaru stood up from the collapsed ruins, shaking off the stones covering his body. On his chest, there was a shallow fist print. It was Roxiu's doing. Then, he patted the dust off his clothes and looked directly at Roxiu. Although you hit me by trading injuries. But next, what should we do? Although he was injured, it wasn't serious. But Roxiu was different. Hit directly by the light sword, his entire shoulder was almost crippled. There would be no suspense in the subsequent battle. How would I know without trying? Hearing this, Roxiu, who had landed on a sand dune, said coldly. But the look in his eyes towards Kizaru was quite solemn. His successful blow, achieved by trading injuries, did not cause much damage to the opponent. The physical quality of an admiral was ridiculously strong. No wonder Akainu and Akiji could fight on one island for 3 days and 3 nights. I can only use the dragon talisman. Roxiu thought to himself, I hope using the 4th talisman won't immediately cause a backlash to my body. Thinking this, Roxiu slowly exhaled, using the horse talisman to adjust his body to its optimal state. The power of the dragon talisman had not yet been exposed. Even Marineford would not know this information. To hit Kizaru, who was no slower than himself, there was no doubt. He had to take him by surprise. Ama no Murakumo sword. Kizaru curled his lips, non-committal to Roxiu's words. The light sword in his hand formed again. His gaze was fixed on Roxiu's shoulder. Attacking there was undoubtedly the best choice. It wouldn't accidentally kill Roxiu, and it would incapacitate him. However, at this moment, Kizaru's eyes, looking at Roxiu, suddenly widened. At this moment, in his line of sight, the sword wound on Roxiu's shoulder was recovering at a visible speed. In a few seconds, it was as good as new. Aside from his torn clothes, no trace remained. Self-healing ability. Kizaru raised an eyebrow, suddenly recalling the report about Roxiu, which mentioned his extremely powerful self-healing ability. He was suspected to be a devil fruit ability user. During this period of fruitless pursuit, he had almost forgotten about this. Kizaru couldn't help but shake his head. Getting old, getting old. Fast, strong, and can self-heal. What a troublesome fellow. But, soon. He curled his lips again. Because just relying on this, it's not enough. Having learned his lesson the first time, he wouldn't fall for it again. Roxio's defeat was already decided, it was only a matter of time. His aura suddenly surged. Wielding the dazzling golden Ama no Murakumo sword, Kizaru transformed into a brilliant photon and attacked again. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind Roxiu. Raising his hand, he slashed down with his sword. Roxiu moved, instantly teleporting away from his original position. The light sword struck an afterimage. The next moment, Roxiu's power-accumulating fist, at the instant Kizaru missed, smashed violently into his side. Bang bang bang. Fierce clashes emitted explosive sounds. In the air, two figures, one yellow and one black, continuously flashed and collided. Each exchange of blows sent out boundless waves of energy. The earth was ravaged by terrifying energy. Yellow sand filled the sky. The terrifying scene was like hell on earth. During this, Roxiu was struck several times by Kizaru's light sword, but he recovered using his self-healing ability. And Kizaru was not at ease either. With every move, he had to guard against Roxiu's fists and kicks. Hiss, how could Roxiu be so strong? In the distance, Crocodile watched Roxiu fiercely battling Kizaru, his eyes filled with disbelief. He definitely hides a great secret. His eyes gleamed, completely certain and convinced. A bounty of only 60 million, yet worthy of being apprehended by an admiral. This clearly indicated that Marineford must know something about Roxiu's strength. But, not much. Otherwise, Kizaru wouldn't have shown that expression just now. Thinking this, Crocodile cursed. Damn it! This Roxiu fellow clearly had such strength, yet deliberately hid it. Playing the pig to eat the tiger, and he became the one eaten. No, being able to go back and forth with Kizaru, his failure was not too shameful. From this unique perspective, Crocodile's mind felt a little more balanced. That's it for today. Meet you in next part.